The Michael Waddell Podcast is presented by Spandau Arms in partnership with Poncho Outdoors, Folds of Honor, and Cigars International.
So I, for one, am not going to be the guy that lecture any man or woman on how they hunt a turkey, how they hunt a deer, whether they use a crossbow, whether they use a gun. Is that guy wrong? Is he a sissy? Is he unworthy? Is he deserving? Yeah, just as much deserving of me. Well, welcome everybody to this episode of the Michael Waddell Podcast. This one's going to be a little different. You notice you don't have a guest sitting in the chair to the right of me. And one reason is because obviously in scheduling, we got a lot of great guests coming. Just to let you know what's coming in the future, we have confirmed a lot of really cool guests from bullfighters. I talked to my buddy Cameron Haynes, got Jeff Foxworthy. We're talking to him about coming on as a guest, and even Caleb Presley. I'm still pushing hard. I really want to sit down and have a long discussion with Theo Vaughn on where he's at in life and obviously all the humor he's brought us, as well as his experience when he went turkey hunting with me from the standpoint of sitting talking to me, not just another random buddy. So we got a lot of cool guests coming up, so I appreciate you guys tuning in. I also appreciate you guys giving us an opportunity to express some of our views. And in this particular podcast, we decided, you might have saw a tweet, you might have saw a Facebook post here recently, that we wanted to ask what is some questions you guys would personally like to ask me. So on this particular podcast, when I get started here, we're going to have my son Mason, Ryan Wakenix here, and we're going over all those questions that was posted on Facebook and the different platforms across social media on things y'all might want me to answer directly, whether it's hunting, whether it's personal, whether it's anything. And so obviously we want to answer as many of those questions as we can in the time we have here on this show. So thank you for tuning in. You might be weed eating, you might be working, you might be riding, taking your kids to school, you might be on a road trip with your family. So welcome to the conversation. It's good to be in your car with you. It's good to be in your living room with you. It's good to be wherever you're at, even if you're working, and you should be working on an Excel spreadsheet, but you happen to be listening to the old redneck Michael Waddell. We're talking about turkey hunting and hunting in general. And one thing I wanted to really start with before I got into the questions is talking about where we're at as a hunting community. And there's a lot of great things that I can hit on, and there's also some things that have really bothered me. And especially as I've got deeper in my faith, I started looking at a lot of the different negativity and the different holier-than-thou hunters as the Pharisees of hunting. And the more I read the Bible, and first of all, I'm not Kirk Cameron. I'm not my buddy Joby Martin. I'm not a televangelist. But the older I get and the more appreciative I get of everything, my family, my friends, business, and the more I have opportunity to have a deeper appreciation for the wild game that I get a chance to hunt, it's hard not to become more spiritual and look for guidance. And so as I read the Bible, the one thing I saw, probably one of the only things that angered Jesus more than anything, was the Pharisees. It's the only place he flipped the tables to where he really got so mad at the law. And sometimes the law becomes very selfish to that person, especially those who make their identity on it and pretend to stand, or maybe even righteously, truly believe sincerely that they're standing on the moral high ground according to a rule. In some cases, these rules are not laws. They're self-governed rules of how we decide that we should act, that all of society has acted. I'm guilty of that, no different than anybody that they might be listening that I'm quickly offending. But when it comes to hunting in general, I've always felt like it's not a privilege. I've always felt like it was a God-given right. I've always felt like it's something that we have an opportunity to do, and hunting has changed over the years. My biggest probably mentors when it comes to hunting, I can name a lot of people in the hunting space that was very influential on me, that I read their articles. People like Chuck Adams, people like Fred Bear, people like Howard Hill, so many different inspirational writers like Rich Gresham. We had Larry Weissman on the show. I always enjoyed reading his articles. And then as soon as it became where articles were still popular, and they still are, but when the television and opportunity through technology took off to where we could not only read, we could visualize these people in the field and doing the things that they wrote about, whether it was Jim Zumbo out west hunting elk and not just writing about it. So that all influenced me. But out of all those influences, probably the biggest influence I had was a Native American culture. and even the early pilgrims that come here, because obviously they hunted for a different reason. I'm not saying that they didn't hunt for spiritual, welfare. I'm not saying, nor was I around and never had a chance to talk to those early Native Americans, indigenous. That gets political in itself. What's the label? Because somebody out there is offended by how you label any one particular person. But I know as I hunt with a lot of different Native Americans, they also refer to themselves as Indians and different cultural, iconic type of situation. But what I have always learned about the Native American culture is the fact of what a deep respect they have for our wildlife and the fisheries. And it wasn't just because they did it for fun or recreation. I would be lying to you if I said I didn't hunt, in many cases, strictly for recreation. Do I enjoy all the table fare that an elk specifically or a white-tailed deer? Those are my two favorite things that I eat. I enjoy moose meat. But to be honest, after about 1,800 pounds of moose meat, there's a sweet taste to me that I'm kind of ready for some elk. I'm ready for a ribeye. I'm ready for a chicken breast. But elk and deer are my two favorite things to eat. However, with that, I do get to the place from time to time to where obviously I realize, do I truly depend on this for the welfare of my family solely just for the meat? Am I a field-to-table hunter? I would say yes, but if I'm being honest, I hunt because it's a great thing to do, to be with my family, to be with my friends, to be in camps across the country, and to chase a resource. So I would say one of the biggest benefits I get is the spirituality of it, of sharing the opportunity to go out and hunt the good Lord's renewable resources. But even though we donate a lot of meat, I can honestly say that everything is not because I have to. It's because I want to. So with that, that's a different take on how the Native Americans and the early settlers hunted and fished based on what we all do now. I'm not saying there ain't somebody living up in the Appalachians. I'm not saying there's somebody ain't living in Alaska that totally and completely depend on the meat that comes out of the wild and they never visit the grocery store. There's somebody, as we're talking, probably won't hear this anyway because they're living off the grid and they're not tuned in with Wi-Fi. They're not Snapchatting. They're not posting on social media their success. Their success is around the dinner table eating the bounty that they collected with whatever weaponry they had. In most cases, probably a rifle. They're probably not taking a traditional bow. They're probably not taking a crossbow. It's probably a 30-06 or 300 mag to secure dinner for their family. The supplies they get is probably sugar, salt, pepper, flour, and yeast, and different things like that. It's the minimal necessities along with the protein they can procure with their own hunting prowess. So with that fundamentally how culturally hunting has changed. Is it a blood sport? It can be argued. That's the big argument with the anti-hunters. We're doing it just for the fun of taking the life. So with that, I don't completely agree with that sentiment or that narrative, but there is a little truth to the fact that we all do enjoy taking a bow and arrow, a rifle, a shotgun, whether you're a duck hunter, turkey hunter, a fishing pole, whether you hunt with live bait, whether you fish with an artificial lure, whether you fish with live scope, or you just on your complete instincts that you might have learned from Hank Parker and Roland Martin, those old school OGs of the fishing industry. But at the end of the day, there's a certain endorphin rush. There's a certain something, to me, that's spiritual about being out in the woods. And so with that, they becomes a selfishness, and they becomes pretty much a primitive instinct to kill. No different than the cat that you might have unwarningly that had a litter of kittens. And when you watch those kittens, they're out there killing grasshoppers, not because they're eager to eat grasshoppers. It's because cats are eager to kill. I've seen a cat, both adult, and I've seen both the kitten kill a mouse, not because they were hungry, because they just wanted to kill it. So I think we would be sitting on a more high ground to say that we don't have some of the same sentiment. And it is one thing that people don't have in them, and that is what they use against the hunting community because we're just killers. Better yet, we're Bambi killers. So with that, when we have the instinct to hunt and we have the desire to hunt, and then we take our family resources, in this case finance, to go forth to try to procure this emotional feeling, whether it's on a target buck, whether he's 5.5, whether he's 180, whether he's the doe in the food plot, whether it's overbait, whether it's in the hardwoods, over hunting white oak acorns or persimmon tree or little crabapple you found that's dropping, or maybe the leftover unwanted kudzu that people have spent years to eradicate in the South. You find that there's deer that still love to feed on the nutritious green that it provides, and so therefore you set up a stand and you kill a deer over it. So with that, when you love it at that level and you use it for table fare, your psychological well-being, then you do it with your friends, there's a certain selfishness that can come over us, because who do we want to be successful? Me, possibly a friend from time to time, and possibly even your family, your kids, your father, your grandfather. But nobody that I know that gets up in a stand 2 hours before daylight, that spent $2,000 on a brand new Hoyt bow, that's already got a wife or a girlfriend semi-pissed off at them because they decided to spend a full day on a Saturday that they had off in the woods, fishing or hunting, to be away from them. Do they want to not find some type of success? So what's the definition of that success? Is it seeing the sunrise? Is it seeing or hearing the cardinal when you see him in a tree, or maybe hear the song of the bluebird or the blue jay out there? Maybe you see a little old gray squirrel crawling up a tree, cutting hickory nut and chewing on it. The sounds that come alive, whippoorwills that you might hear singing, the old barred owl. Maybe you hear a hawk whistling across the tree line. Maybe it's just seeing the frost and the wood ducks or the greenheads coming in an old swamp that you're hunting on the edge of. There's so many things that's awesome and majestic about the outdoors. And so some of us, many of us, probably more than they are less of us, enjoy and never take that for granted. But in the back of our mind, we're there enjoying these things with the complete intentions of taking this bow and arrow, this 30-06, this crossbow, the idle, if that's what you decide to hunt with, or the traditional Black Widow bow, or the one that you found some Osage orange and you dried out and you wrapped it in rattlesnake and built your own cedar arrows and then napped out a flint head to kill, similar to what the Native Americans did. We still have the burning desire to find success and to see a well-placed arrow behind the shoulder of a deer. We still have the uncanny and just completely feeling of what it would be like to have a big old strutting Tom at 20 yards, whether he's over a decoy or come to your call, to come upside his head with a shotgun. If that didn't exist, how many of us would be out there? We can bird watch from our porch. Every evening now it's become a ritual and a habit that in the mornings, my wife and I have a cup of coffee. We sit on the back porch because the sun comes up typically in our house there, and it's facing the east. So early in the southern morning, it gets really hot and warm. We sit on the back porch and have our coffee. The evening times, the hun's sitting behind us, we get on the front porch. So coffee in the morning, watching birds, humming birds. I can hear many times turkeys gobbling off on a distance on my farm. I have no desire to get up and leave the company of my wife, in many cases my kids, as we're sitting there and have a nice breakfast. And I enjoy those times. But I can secure that environmental sense of freedom and taste of the wild sitting right there in the comfort of my home on my back porch or my front porch. Evenings are reversed, consist of wine, for me a cold beer, a fine cigar from Cigars International, and you're sitting out there just puffing on a cigar, and I'm watching the same bluebirds maybe that I saw that morning before over in the front yard, or the eating out of a bird feeder. I'm seeing the squirrels. I'm seeing my wife's little weenie dog that I call Wonderful Weenie, the adventure dog, just scurry off the porch and running just like a Comanche chasing a buffalo to hopefully secure a squirrel. However, when I choose to get up 2 hours before those times that we spend daylight having coffee, my intentions is to envision and see some of the same things. But my true goal is to bring something home in the back of the truck. When I go turkey hunting and I'm with our producer, when I'm with my son, when I'm with somebody who bought a hunt out of philanthropy, ironically enough, through NWTF, to create money for conservation, that morning that particular person, whether he spent $20,000 or $250,000 as the highest bidder that's ever paid to procure a hunt with me, my intentions are not to watch them. My intentions are not to let them win. My intentions are for me or this person who bought that hunt to bring home the bounty. And yes, That particular case in a turkey hunt, the end result of joy and satisfaction is marinating in jalapeno pickle juice. Then I soak them in buttermilk for an hour, 24 hours in the pickle juice. And then later on that evening or the next day, some hot peanut oil, preferably around 350. Fry it quick, fry it hard, put a good shell. Sometimes I batter them in the eggs from my wife's chicken coop. Good organic egg, probably overfed way more than me. These chickens have chandeliers in their chicken coop. But sometimes I will go a little Chinese there and I'll batter it or dip it and egg wash it. And let me tell you, if you don't think it ain't satisfactory, if you don't think it puts a smile on my face and anybody, whether they're a hunter or not, then you're wrong. Everybody's happy. I've never met anybody who don't like fried wild turkey cut up in nuggets that's been marinated in pickle juice or jalapeno juice, and they'll swear they're at Chick-fil-A. But if I was honest, did I do or go to kill that turkey for that particular reason? I would be lying. I think whether you are higher than thou or more moral than thou, whether you reaped him, whether you called him in, whether you shot him with TSS, or whether you used your granddaddy's wing bone, or maybe you did find one of those historical relics and somehow stole it from the Smithsonian and yupped him in with a wing bone that Geronimo had actually killed a turkey and did the same. You were looking for the same results I was, and that is to see a turkey flop and to bring him home. Success has already been made way before you ate him. That's the birthday cake. Your birthday is what feels good. The birthday cake is just the last little thing a fat boy does, and you're excited about it when you go to bed. Know somebody loved you enough to fix you a birthday cake. That's what I do for every hunter that bags a turkey, whether it is a Caleb Presley, whether it is a Jim Brewer, whether it's a Luke Bryan or Blake Shelton. We sat down and enjoy what we had a chance, man, with our hands, with our prowess, with our technique and manipulation to get this turkey in range. The same could be said for fishing. So when you start getting into that, I think we can all agree on that. And my true goal in this particular rant, talk, or way of communication, I hope we can find some common ground, whether you feel like you're a Pharisee or whether maybe this is the first time you've ever been called out to say you are a Pharisee when it comes to your moral high ground of what you stand on in hunting. Because what you'll find, the common ground is we all go out on the lake, either to wakeboard, to tube, ride around, drink beer, and listen to Leonard Skinner, or may Dua Lipa, whatever her name is. You might even crank up some old Tupac and Biggie Smalls. But for my buddies, specifically sitting in this room, Mason Waddell, Ryan Wakenig, who would just about rather fish than hunt, you better be careful if you go out thinking that's what's going to be the end result if you get on a ski boat, pontoon boat, john boat, or a kayak. They're not out there for recreation. You leave at daylight, you fish, and about 1 o'clock, you're like, man, can we turn up some Biggie Smalls? And they look at you like you got on Italian loafers and possibly started flying the rainbow flag, because they're not there for any other recreation other than their attempt to catch every fish out of West Point, Lake Hardin, or Smith Lake. The reason I know is I fish with them. Are they wrong or right? They're burning desire. And to make it even worse, sometimes they're not about even just catching fish. Sometimes the day consists of throwing a top water frog all day long when I'm sitting there, and the little knowledge I know about bass fishing, I could probably take a little worm and hook him in the middle, and they call it a wacky rig or maybe a Texas rig, and catch many buck bass right out of a dock that's sitting on Miss Jackson's dock right up under her nice ski nautique. But no, that's not their goal. We're going to fish with a swim bait today. Not for a couple hours, all day. The result might be 2 nice fish over 3 pounds. I think of it as I'm dehydrated, I'm starving, and it didn't seem like that damn much fun to me. But guess what? They're wired different. We're going to stop for a quick break, but please don't go anywhere. We got so much to come.
Spandau Arms was founded with a simple idea. The best part of hunting isn't the gear, it's the memories. From the first rooster rise of the season in the tall grass to the last second opportunity on the target buck as sunset closes in, Spandau believes firearms should be built to perform, priced to be accessible, and designed to become an essential piece of your hunting story. Their lineup includes field-ready shotguns and precision-driven rifles built for hunters, competitors, and recreational shooters who know that quality and dependability matter more than the hype. born from the experience of American hunters and crafted by generations of gunmakers. Each Spandau firearm is built for real-world performance in the moments that matter.
If you love a good stogie like I do, look no further than cigarsinternational.com. They got you covered from soup to nuts. No matter what brand of cigar you're looking for, no matter what accessories you're looking for, if you log into cigarsinternational.com/Waddell, you're also going to receive immediately a 20% discount on your order. And the cool thing about it, there's no limits, there's no minimums. You just simply order, shop, put in your discount code, which is Waddell, and you're going to get 20% off and free shipping. No matter if you're looking for humidors or any of your accessories, no matter where you want to have a good stogie, around a campfire or around the ranch, you got it all right there at cigarsinternational.com. And don't forget to add /Waddell for your 20% discount and free shipping. I can also throw the story of me taking the same person I mentioned, Mason Waddell, and his brothers turkey hunting. If you really want to ask them now what their true desire was to hunt with Dad, probably just spend a morning hanging out with Pops. Did they really have a burning desire to kill a turkey? If you ask them all, maybe the answer would be different. They probably did. But at the level of leaving at 5 in the morning and returning at 5 p.m., only eating a pack of Lance peanut butter crackers, and maybe 2 Vienna sausages apiece because we only had 1 can and they had to share it with 3 other brothers? The answer would probably be no. But yet my desire was only, not in the experience, is not just to kill a turkey, but possibly get them tagged out. And if it's really good and the turkey's in a good stage and they're working, maybe we all kill one. If that took all day, then so be it. That was my joy. That was my fun, but not necessarily they shared the same sentiment and the value of what that morning meant when it went to hunting. So I say that because all of us are different. All of us have a different perspective when we go to the woods. All of us have a different selfishness of what we're looking for, whether it is just cruising around, whether it is just hanging out, whether it is a cold beer, whether it is to fish a little bit and have fun a lot. And then the definition of fun, well, what is it to you? Well, obviously, you know, if you're a diehard bow hunter, you don't think anything about booking Hunt Saskatchewan, sitting up there from daylight to dark just to see maybe 2 deer. You'll do it for 7 days on out, and Sundays in a lot of places in the Canadian provinces, you can't even hunt. So Sunday is the only day to not hunt. It's not because you didn't want to. It's because some reason a weird government said you couldn't. The rest of the time you spent daylight to dark. So a lot of hunters that say they like to hunt don't like it at the same level of that guy sitting out there literally in 30 degrees below Fahrenheit in a Summit lock-on tree stand with a bow hung on an easy hanger, sitting there hoping. They're not doing it for the joy. They're not doing it to bird watch because you don't see a lot of nothing in Saskatchewan. As a matter of fact, you don't even hear anything. You feel blessed to hear possibly just a little bird fly by you, just a whew. That was something different. You look forward, if you're not diehard, just to freaking eat your lunch come around 12:30, 1 o'clock, only to find that your Capri Sun and your 5 Alive and the carrot cake that you packed yourself is frozen harder than $5 worth of Jawbreakers by the time you eat it. You're out there not for the 5 Alive little sports drink you had in there or the Gatorade that you only lick on it like a popsicle when you was about 5 years old. You're out there for one reason. A 300-pound dark horn 170 that come mysteriously walking into a bait pile eating alfalfa, maybe some oats, and your desire and burning desire to put a G5 Mega Meat, if that's what you choose. Many decide that it needs to be beveled. Many decide that that air that weighs 400 grams is just licorice stick. It's just a kid's era. And that air should weigh 800 grains, 700 grains. That's a whole nother debate on the equipment we use. But what we all share, whether we're sitting up there with 30-06, traditional bow, brand new Hoyt, brand new Matthews, we're spending that money and that time away from home for one objective, especially in this sentiment or this situation, and that is to kill the biggest buck that might live in this particular tract of land that you have. I find that there's nothing offensive about that. Do you see me hunt a lot in Saskatchewan? No. Why? Because I like and prefer to drink my little old kid drink, Capri Sun, that's packed in my lunch, that's cool but not frozen. I prefer to come back at lunch many times and to see who all's in camp and to catch up on the stories and talk about what they saw. Maybe build a nice fire out there. Maybe fry up some cube steak of a doe that we killed the day before and spend time with my family and my friends and to take the whole experience. That's what's fun to me. I'm not saying this for everybody. I enjoy, even in hunting camp, turning on a good college football game, or maybe it's an NFL game, and watching that game and strategizing with my buddies on where we should go and spend the evening based on the wind and the deer movement that we assume or pray that's going to happen in these situations, and pick it up and pray that one of us get back and we can make sure our havalons are secure and we can start skinning a deer, hopefully right around dusk before supper. So every hunting venture is different. I got friends that live out west that to them, hunting is not fun unless they walk at least 8 miles with a 50-pound pack on their back, packing everything from mountain house to protein to mountain ops. And they're not even eager to kill something. They just hopefully want to be semi-attacked by a grizzly bear. And if they do kill a deer or an elk, they are more excited about packing them out. That's not me. If you see me in person, I try to keep myself in good enough shape to walk that same distance, but I'm also completely fine with getting to Kawasaki Ridge and packing my elk out that same way, because you notice my waistline, I'm a little plump. My waistline has grown over the years, and I'm proud of it because I like biscuits, I like gravy, and I like the elk meat that goes with it, but I'm also fine with a piece of cheesecake that comes at the end of it. So the sentiment in this whole story of what I'm trying to portray is you'll find a lot of different desires, a lot of different potential. So many times we get divided on how somebody goes about it. And then we even go as far as to say, well, this person, which particularly that person that they're talking about is them or me that deserves that particular trophy, when the other person did not deserve it because he did take a break for lunch. Or maybe he hasn't hunted. Maybe he hasn't put the food plot in. Maybe he hasn't have the same knowledge that you might have on duck hunting or turkey hunting. So what happens is you have a selfishness that comes about you that really gets hid sometimes by conservation, whether it's the tactic or whether it's the way you go about it. And I want to share a story with you that hit me young, but didn't really come back to let me know that I was no different than those same people, that I too was just as much guilty as being a Pharisee of hunting and becoming and believing I was entitled to something over other people. And this is a story I never told, but I happened to talk at lunch at the Whistling Pig as we was eating chicken fingers, and then we finished up the stories and got back to our conference table here in the Bone Collector headquarters. But the story goes, I grew up hunting and fishing. My dad was a diehard hunter and fisherman, particularly whitetail deer hunting. He was obsessed with it. It caused problems in my dad's marriage. I several times saw the biggest arguments. I never saw my dad and mom argue about nothing other than my dad's complete selfish ambition to hunt every moment he had. Because my dad was either doing two things when I was a kid. He was either working daylight to dark, but if he come home before dark, that was because he knew it was a cold November day and the deer would be moving. Selfishly, and I'm not calling out my dad, but I think my dad, he didn't come home just to spend a romantic evening with my mom. I'm not saying he didn't spend many romantic evenings with my mom. Obviously, I'm here. There was some romance. But what I will say is this is a cold day. I knew it, and my mom knew it. I could always tell around November 1st or 2nd, from Halloween on, when my dad got off work and he showed his face and he come in about 2 o'clock and he wasn't working, he was getting ready to go hunting. He never said, jump in the car, boys. We're going bowling. He never said, honey, why don't you jump in the car? We're going to Atlanta to spend the weekend. Not saying he didn't do it, but never did I remember that happen in November on a cold, frosty day when the corn had been cut and the deer hitting them white oak acorns, especially when he thought old Big Daddy Mossback was wandering around somewhere in Booger Bottom. He and my Uncle Morgan, that's all they did. So in that, what did he want more than anything? His son, which was me, to hunt with him. So I did. Back in those days, there weren't a lot of deer. We didn't see a lot of deer. So I shared the joy of that sentiment of going hunting. I don't know why I keep saying sentiment. It's just something I looked up in the source. It felt pretty solid and good, and it makes me feel a little bit more like Joe Rogan. However, what I will say is I loved it, and I will actually refrain from that. I liked it. I didn't love it. He loved it. So one particular morning, I never forget, it was Friday. It was after a football game. One of my dearest friends in the world, Keith Elliott, was spending the night. He was a country boy, lived on a dairy farm, but his dad didn't take him hunting a lot. My dad, every friend that come over, whether you agreed on it or not, as the parent who allowed your son or daughter, which was mostly sons, daughters didn't come over, even though later in my life, as I got in high school, I wish more of the daughters did come to my house, and some did, and I'm thankful for it. But at this particular time, your friends, which were dudes, that you liked so many of the same things, dirt bikes, playing in the ditch, Hot Wheels, building forts, going fishing, frog gigging, catching lizards, catching snakes, and praying that you knew enough about the differences in poisonous snakes and a chicken snake. What would bite? All would bite, but what would send you to the hospital? But needless to say, we was chasing those things. I grew up in the country, lived on a dirt road. My dad lived his childhood through me, which you could hear a whole nother podcast, him and his buddy Bill Joe talking about. And we hunted and we fished. We rode dirt bikes, and my dad always had some kind of cool dirt bike or four-wheeler. I look back, did he buy it for me, or did he buy it for me for him? I think it was a little of both. So when I had a buddy come over, I will say in those early ages of 12 and 13, my idea of having a friend over wasn't to go hunting with him. My idea was I had somebody that could spend the weekend and we could ride dirt bikes together. We could do some of these things together. Sometimes a hunt was more fun to look at squirrel hunting, maybe going rabbit hunting or flushing up a cubby of quail than it was sitting for 4 hours in a tree stand on a cold day. I thought that'd be fun. And then the second of all, when you're 12 and 13, what's very valuable is sleeping to 9 or 10 o'clock. Maybe sleeping to lunch. And getting up and watching Looney Tunes and the Tasmanian Devil and Bugs Bunny, the Smurfs, all these different cartoons that come on Saturday morning, and sitting there indulging yourself on Fruit Loops until your mama turned around and ended up cooking another big, healthy, I guess these days we call it brunch or lunch, that would consist of something sure enough that would stick to your ribs. Maybe it grits and eggs and bacon, some country ham. Maybe it was some tomato gravy with some big old cat head biscuits. Those are the memories I've had. So this particular time, Keith Elliott spends the night with me on Friday night. It was a cold morning. It was late in October. I remember it like yesterday, and my dad approached us both that evening and said, "Hey, boys, y'all want to go hunting in the morning? I'll take y'all." Of course we said yes. What a great start of the weekend. Get up, go spend a couple hours in a tree stand. Then we'd come back, and in my mind, ride dirt bikes all day, go fishing, go run around and do whatever a young man could get into that wanted to pretend he was Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer for a day. Well, as I went to bed that night, it hit me that it was Friday night. I didn't have school the next day. I had my buddy there, and I thought to myself, man, I don't know if I want to get up. It's really cold outside. However, my buddy Keith was so fired up about it because he had never been deer hunting. As a matter of fact, he had never even shot a high-powered rifle. He spent plenty of times with a Red Ryder, a little Crossman BB gun or pellet rifle. Spent many times plinking with a 22 long rifle, but never had he shot a 30-06. Looking back, I don't even know if we should have been shooting a 30-06. But that was a gun of choice, particularly a 7.42 Remington Woodmaster. 30-06, 180 grain bullet, round point, Remington ammunition. It smelled just like the can of rim oil that it come with. It stenched. Looking back, that's probably the best smell. I always thought for us kids that grew up in the 70s and 80s, get us a Yankee candle that smells like rim oil. And man, all I'd want to do is lay around and envision big bucks walking around in the cornfield. But this particular morning, as daylight approached, 2 hours before daylight, my dad turns on the light. He didn't come in there with, "Hey, big buddy, will you want to get up?" Turn on the light. "Boys, time to get up. Let's rock and roll. We're going to get a big one today." Well, immediately I grumbled and groaned. And looking back on my hunting with my dad, the 7 or 8, 10 times I went prior to that, I looked back, I hadn't even seen a deer. So I thought, my mom's home. I know my mom's going to make a big breakfast. I know my buddy Keith will be back soon, and we will go and enjoy the rest of our Tom Sawyer Huck Finn pretend-to-be's that we were going to get into. Well, Keith goes hunting. I sleep in. I knew I'd made the right decision because the bed never felt so cool and crisp, yet I was warm with a big, thick blanket pulled up over my head. I heard the truck pull out, which was an old 3/4-ton Chevrolet truck with a ladder rack Dad made his living to pay the light bill with skill saws and leftover lumber. It sounded like a carnival ride when it left out of there, jangling around the different things and nails and different things in the back of that truck. Well, they go back, and I thought, well, in my mind, Keith ain't going to see nothing. Dad ain't going to get nothing either. You could only kill 2 deer in Georgia. My dad hadn't killed one. He had hunted at least every day that I knew he had opportunity and had yet to kill a deer that particular season. So I sleep in. I was solid with my decision. They were the idiots. I was a smart one. I'd wake up, visit with my mom. I'd be smelling the bacon, and I'd get up about the time they got in. Well, the one thing I didn't think would happen is Keith knew even how to handle this 30-06. And I figured that my dad would set Keith and Julian's stand, that we called it. It was just east of the backfield that we hunted, down in a pine flat, no bait. And if you're sitting in a pine flat, there literally is no bait because it ain't an acorn tree. We didn't technically and tactically know a lot about deer hunting, nor did my dad. We just knew that you couldn't kill them watching Looney Tunes. You had to be out in the woods where they lived. And I figured my dad would set Keith and Julian's stand because he told me he was. My dad went on down to the island stand, which he thought was a hot spot. No trail cameras. We didn't know what was out there, but based on the rubs, we knew there was a new Milo Hansen world record out there somewhere lurking in the shadows of Booger Bottom. Well, it turns out I was wrong, and to a degree, my dad was wrong. Because when they come back at about 10:30, 11 that morning, I thought that possibly my dad had just given Keith a brand new Kawasaki KX80. I thought that maybe Keith was running in because I could hear him screaming and jumping for joy that he was excited that Mama was cooking breakfast. I thought he was excited to see his old buddy, Waddy. We was about to hit it hard, son. Go up to Uncle Morgan's, go fishing, get after it. But to my surprise, what he was excited about, he had one of the biggest bucks to this day I've ever seen come out of them Booger Bottom woods in the back of that old truck. It wasn't on the ladder rack, but it was in the bed, and his old head was laid out of the back of that sucker. He had just killed a giant buck. I was happy. That's a lie. I was so pissed off. I was so hurt. I was so devastated. I felt myself being overcome, didn't even know that emotion, wasn't familiar with it, of entitlement and selfishness. How dare my friend come over here to play with me, go hunting with my dad, and I had hunted at least 7 to 10 times with my dad, hadn't even seen a deer. How dare him, this undeserving buddy of mine that I loved dearly and couldn't wait to spend the weekend with, hang out with, had just killed a giant Booger Bottom buck. Now, my dad seemed to be very unselfish. He was fired up, bragging on Keith's shot. Couldn't believe it. One shot right behind the shoulder. Indeed, dropped the deer in his track. Didn't even to track. His first shot from a 30-06 with a Bushnell 3x9 banner scope on it with over and under quickie sights, if you remember those days. He didn't need the 10 rounds of ammo my dad gave him because back then you took a box of shells. Why? Because most of the time the first shot seemed to be a warning shot. Nope, one shot dropped the biggest buck I'd ever seen, even that my dad had killed. And I caught myself fuming. I didn't know it until now, but I realized that I was a selfish person. You would think that I'd been happy for my buddy Keith, but all I kept thinking is I had confirmed in my mind I made the right decision to sleep in that morning, spend time with my mom, and sleep about 9:30. One reason I wanted to sleep in is because if you grew up in a household like I did, it didn't matter if it was Friday, Saturday, school day. There wasn't no sleeping in. You was going to get up. If my dad was up and he wasn't going to work, you were going to do something he was going to do, which most of the time his hobby was more work. Cutting firewood, fixing a fence, weed eating, working on an old tractor, or showing me the value, if you're going to own a dirt bike, what it was like to service it. Why it needed to be serviced at 7:30 in the morning when we could have just slept to 9, I don't know. You have to ask him. But many of you that are listening to this had dads just like that. So in my mind, to sleep to 9:30 was a good decision. I was going to get the same breakfast they did when they got back. Other than I got me some Fruit Loops prior to the good breakfast, and I got a chance to binge watch some Looney Tunes. I caught myself at ruining the whole weekend with Buddy Keith. Every time we would stop and go fish or get on a creek and start building a dam or catch some crawfish, he's like, I can't believe it, man. What a buck. That was the best experience I'd ever had. I resented that he'd killed that buck. So it hit me how selfish I was versus just a solid, congratulations, buddy. But I couldn't say congratulations because if you want to know the truth about it, he didn't deserve it. He had never been to Julian Stand. He didn't help build it like I did with my dad. I remember helping him and my Uncle Morgan and Julian build it. The reason it was called Julian Stand is because Julian always wanted to stand in this area. That's my Uncle Morgan's brother. And we built it with leftover treated wood and railroad spikes that took John Henry to drive these particular spikes in the tree. And then you had to have the skill set and balls of Eli Tomac to climb it. Because climbing it was no different than hitting LaRocco's Leap right now if you're up in Redbud, Michigan, thinking about that big old triple they got there. So what in the world did he do in deserving this? I didn't even know he knew where the safety was, and indeed he didn't. My dad had to show him. My dad had climbed up the stand, and I knew that Keith had spent his morning just like I did, probably a little more excited because it was his first time. There were no cell phones. There was no electronic Yahtzees. My dad didn't let him bring the Adventures of Huck Finn or maybe Where the Red Fern Grows to read as he watched. No, you sat and scanned and you watched all day. Not only did you guarantee to sit there to 10 o'clock, most of the time, if you was a kid that my dad took hunting, you were going to be sitting there to lunch because my dad would hunt to 9:30, 10. Then he'd get down and do the Cherokee stomp all around the property, and he would explore. That was his time away from responsibilities of mom and the family. He would walk around, find a white oak tree that was dropping. He would find a place that he was going to use other leftover lumber and his son Michael to come over there and help him build it. But later in life, I realized how we all share that same sentiment. And then so many times we get on our moral high ground of who deserves it and who don't. And then you get to the situation, who is entitled to anything? We learn real quick, life ain't fair. So we get so divided, and it's because we all share the commonality of selfishness. And to this day, I struggle with it. I got neighbors, I got friends, I got people I really respect and love. And when we go hunting or I hear the neighbor or I hear a rifle shot over on the neighbor, my immediate thought to this day, and I promise you if they're being honest, their immediate thought if they hear one of my kids shoot or me or my wife, they think, I hope they're taking out some does. I hope that ain't that big 10-pointer with a kicker off his G2. Now, at the end of the day, because we're humans, and if we're raised right, we'll realize just a simple congratulations is in order, whether it was one of my kids or whether from my end it was one of their kids. And so I realized real quick, there's so many times we talk about hunting and we think about conservation and we think about our ethics and we think about, well, he shot him with a rifle, not a bow. Is it really because it bothered us that he shot him with a rifle? Are we that concerned about people? If we're that concerned about it, the same person that maybe used a 30-06, we weren't too concerned when the guy was going through the roughest times in his life to help him. But in one of the good times, because he shot a deer with a 30-06 versus a compound bow, or maybe he used a crossbow, we're mad, and all of a sudden we think this person isn't deserving because we put more work in. So when you think about this in both ways, even if I'm talking to the people that I'm offending, or I'm talking to the guy who truly does and don't care and is not worried about how somebody else does it because they know there's different strokes for different folks and we're all different creatures and we're looking for all kind of different adventure, we all still have that common ground of an immediate envy and jealousy. It don't just stop at hunting. It stops in everything. It stops in your buddy that both of y'all was broke trying to make ends meet, didn't know if you was going to hang sheetrock, didn't know if you was going to end up running a bull float, didn't know if you was going to end up selling insurance or working at the Quickie Lube, all which would be good jobs. But then one of your buddies who had the same dream as you did somehow turned around, maybe hit the scratch off, maybe won the lotto, or maybe just by happenstance and hard work end up being a foreman of some IT company, or turned out to be the top insurance salesman, and then ended up possibly even starting his own business, and he's framing his own houses. He's got his own lawn care system or service, and he becomes very wealthy in the eyes of you. So many of us are so quick to degrade that person or to say something negative versus be excited with them in their moment of success. And like I say, I'm just trying to say that all of us have those same situations, some more than others, but every one of us fight it. Every one of us can covet what somebody else does. This is just talking about how sometimes goals collide and some people can be offended or frustrated, and then we become the judge and jury of who deserves and who don't. I, for one, have never stood on one particular identity, and I guess if I'm standing on one identity, I will tell you, if I go hunting, my goal is not to let them win that particular morning. If I don't want them to win, that's the mornings I still sleep in. If I don't want them to win, that's the mornings that me and my sons now get up and ride pit bikes. We love motocross. Or that's the day that I decide that my son Mason twists my arm and say, hey, let's go fishing. I don't really care if we kill a turkey. Why don't we go fishing? I'm telling you, these bass are spawning. So when we look at all these things that we put forth, it's so easy to see how we become sometimes stand on identity or get to a place of moral high ground in our own mind to go along with our identity to sometimes justify our success, but always to negatively talk negative about somebody else's success. Some of us know a lot, some of us know little. I know nothing about golf, but the third time I'd ever played on hole 4 over in Alabama with a friend, I hit an eagle. I don't know if I deserved that eagle, but if you play the game of golf, you know ain't nobody out there but you and a club and a white ball that somehow the Scottish thought would be fun to start a sport that revolutionized the world. And I still don't think it was the funnest game I've ever played. As a matter of fact, I ain't played one time at all. But on that 4th hole, on that golf course in Alabama, I got an eagle. And for a fleeting moment, I thought I was just as good as McElroy or whatever, the fella that just won the Masters. Only to realize that it was a very lucky shot. How do I know it was a very lucky eagle? It's because after that, the guy I was playing with said, Michael, why don't you just drive the beer cart and just try to hit your driver and we'll go from there. Because we were afraid that I was going to knock out some of the windows out of the clubhouses and the homes that surrounded these houses that I don't know if we were liable for or not. And I realized just how sucky I was and how lucky it was that I got that eagle on hole 4. That happens in hunting. There's people that know nothing about it. Maybe they don't deserve it, but they have the same rights. And so many times, if those same people go by the law, whether we like it or not, based on their hunting statute in their state, they have just as much right as those who have spent our whole life trying to get toward that goal. So in that, hunting is not just mine. It's not just yours. It's everyone's. And so with that comes a lot of tactics and a lot of end result that you're trying to get to. And so many times we get in our own head and we get in our own mind and we think that what we do is the only way to do something. And so many different times we stand on this Howell Moore ground and make it our identity because we don't think it's just, only to find that when we fall from that identity, we look like a bunch of fools. So I found that in the world of social media, in the world of how you should do it and how you should not do it, and how some people should do this way and that way, I think it's a crock of crap, to be honest. Now, maybe I can say that because I have been blessed to do a lot of hunting. And maybe I've hunted a lot more of my selfishness out of me. Now I can honestly say that I'm very happy to go through a turkey season and for me to personally shoot very little turkeys, but to see the high numbers of what is killed to be through the eyes of others. Whether it be my neighbor, whether it be my friends and family, whether it be through a hunt that raised a lot of money, ironically again, for conservation, I find that I get more joy out of seeing other people's. I was not always there, so I'm not saying you need to be there. But what I am saying, if you're the guy who is just dead against, and you actually go as far as to make a post on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook to say, don't even start on me. Somebody that kills a turkey with a decoy or reaps a turkey didn't deserve it, and that ain't turkey hunting. You ain't got nothing to be proud of. When you start really looking through it and dig a little deeper and become a journalistic reporter and try to find, or investigative reporter and find out, well, what was this guy that did and see, he did do a little funky, stupid dance that could be disrespectful. Maybe he killed him through showing him a decoy, or maybe through a gobbler decoy, to find out that was the first guy's turkey and his only turkey he killed. Yet the guy that's condemning him, you look, he's killed 8 turkeys, but he did it in a moral high ground way. So I'm assuming that his turkeys, those 7 turkeys, are less dead than this guy's 1 turkey, or his only turkey he's ever killed. That to me, I don't understand. I can understand how you might like a different tactic better than others. I can understand how you could go fishing and you would rather catch them on top water versus a wacky rig. But to make your way the only way is one of the most narcissistic, Pharisee, Sadducee type of situation. We're going to stop for a quick break, but please don't go anywhere. We got so much to come.
A wingman flies close with unwavering dedication. At Folds of Honor, a wingman stands with families of America's fallen or disabled heroes. The burial flag given to their grieving family is folded 13 times. As a wingman, your $13 monthly donation provides scholarships to their spouses and children. 13 folds, $13. Become a wingman. Join today at foldsofhonor.org. Spandau Arms was founded with a simple idea. The best part of hunting isn't the gear, it's the memories. From the first rooster rise of the season in the tall grass to the last second opportunity on the target buck as sunset closes in. Spandau believes firearms should be built to perform, priced to be accessible, and designed to become an essential piece of your hunting story. Their lineup includes field-ready shotguns and precision-driven rifles built for hunters, competitors, and recreational shooters who know that quality and dependability matter more than the hype. Born from the experience of American hunters and crafted by generations of gunmakers, each Spandau firearm is built for real-world performance in the moments that matter.
Father's Day is coming up, and if you're like me, you're always looking for something cool to buy your father. And for the wives out there or the kids that's looking for something special for that special person, in this case, your father, you got to check out Poncho Outdoors, man. I'm telling you, if you've never worn a poncho shirt, let me tell you, when you do, you're going to be in for a treat. The fit is amazing. I wear a poncho shirt nearly at least every other day. I got one on right now. You can get them in any color that you can think about typically. Here I got a camo one on, but also the fit is amazing. They travel well. They don't wrinkle. They're breathable. They don't just bunch up. They don't look like a big tent when you're on you. However, if you go and order your shirt, you can get them in a variety of different fits, whether it's regular fit, whether it's slim fit. Depending on your body makeup, you can find a poncho shirt that's perfect. And for Father's Day, if you just go to ponchooutdoors.com/Waddell, you're going to get immediately $10 off and free shipping. Once you buy one, you're going to want to buy 5. Believe me, when you buy your first poncho shirt, it won't be your last. And then what we all can do is start looking deep into the hunting culture and getting back to my Native American ancestors and say, well, what is one of the coolest things about Native American? They hunted for a different reason. They was looking for ceremonial feathers. They were looking to feed their family. And so you can look up, even on the internet, which, you know what, let's take a stab at it right now. Bear with me. Let's see here. I want to just look and see here. Did indeed. Here it is right here. The Native American using this is crazy. Now you can Google this. Maybe Bill Gates is tricking us all and this is a bunch of crock, and it could be. Native Americans have used decoys for hunting for over 2,000 years. That's wild. With the oldest known discovered in Nevada's livestock cave, made from bundled 2 reeds of feathers and paint. Early decoys are crafted from natural materials, specifically tulle, marsh, plant reeds, cattails, and sometimes wood. Then it goes into the traditional why and reason. Here's one of the most important lines: cultural significance of today versus then. And this is where y'all think y'all going to hook me and tell me I'm wrong. The traditional using of decoys was crucial to survival technique passed down through generations. These items considered a functional art, and vintage examples from those of the Cree Nation found in collections today. Now, in this example, it shows duck decoys, it shows deer decoys, it shows elk, it shows all these different decoys. Now, cultural significance, they obviously were hunting because of a necessity of the nourishment that this protein secured. So now we can say, well, that's not needed. So now ask yourself, and let me ask myself, why am I hunting? Am I hunting just to kill the turkey? Or did I really need it because that's the only means my family had to eat that night? The answer, and not to give power to the anti-hunters, is the fact that we didn't have to do it. We did it because we wanted to. We did it because we wanted to see that turkey die. So the same guy that did it because he didn't use decoys, maybe he didn't use TSS, and maybe he used a way. Now, this is just an example I give with turkeys. We could go into others with deer and elk and everything else. Is the fact that your 7 turkeys, even with your technique, those turkeys are every bit as dead as the one guy who killed one with a decoy. And the one thing they share in common, none of them had to be shot because it wasn't necessity outside of the hobby, outside of the excitement, outside of the passion, outside of the culture that we love to keep going. And traditionally, that's why we look back on the Native American ancestry and the early pilgrims who mastered the art of surviving on the good Lord's renewable resource. So who are we to judge? We have laws to go by. And so what ends up happening, at least my thought process in this, so many times the guy that shot 7 turkeys traveling around the country, always in camouflage, always talking about the decline of the turkeys, and I'm worried about the turkeys, never really stops killing a turkey. But somehow he's more moral and is more Pharisee-like because he is better than the other guy because he did it a certain way. But I think what ends up happening a lot of times, if we're really being honest with ourselves, the 7 turkeys this guy killed doing it a certain way, he's more frustrated because that number 7 turkey could have turned into number 8 if the one guy didn't use the decoy. Same can be said with fishing. Live scope is ruining fishing. Live scope is not ruining fishing. Now, I'm getting really controversial. I'm probably going to piss off a lot of people. Some of my heroes of fishing. The reason I say it won't is because people are fishing everywhere. It ain't because it's ruining fishing. It's because more people are fishing. And if more people fishing, that's minus a fish that might have been caught just before you got there. But you're standing on your identity that it's a technique. And if you use this technique, these guys don't deserve it and they wouldn't even be out there. The guy that can take a call, and I've got turkey hunting buddies that stand behind the fact that they don't like certain ways that maybe I hunt a turkey from time to time. I don't have a certain way I hunt turkeys. I hunt turkeys to kill a turkey when I decide to kill a turkey. And I feel, to agree, pretty damn good at it. State of Alabama, they outlaw decoys for the first couple of weeks, have no problem with it. It's never interfered with my ability or my buddy Joey Massengale to kill a turkey. Never. If you outlawed them altogether. If you outlawed the use of a skill saw to build a house, it just makes my dad sweat a little more. The house is still going to get built. They didn't have saws forever. It was a hand saw. Some of the best works of architecture, some of the best homes that you see in the South were built, and there wasn't an electric drill or saw ever used, or certainly a nail gun. Because a good contractor, a good carpenter is going to build what he wants to build because he will make ends meet. A great hunter will be able to be successful. So the argument is, well, what about the guy that don't deserve it? Well, who is it that don't deserve it? Never saw in biblical scripture where it said, this guy can, this guy can't. It's for all of us. How we go about it and how we respect it is just that. And true conservation is not in a tactic. It's in just deciding, should I pull the trigger? Should I not? Whether you did it your way that you think is honorable, whether you think it's the moral high ground and the most respectful to the turkey. I think if a turkey could come back alive, he's no more happy with Philip Culpepper using a decoy or Dave Owens re-upping him in and videoing him with a GoPro on his chest and killing him with copper-plated shells. He's just as dead. He don't like either one of them. He don't feel no respect from Philip nor Dave. Both of them use modern technologies and a sure enough unbelievable turkey call that was invented somewhere overseas that you can buy now on Amazon with condom latex and prophylactics that are way beyond what our Indians ever had. Camouflage that's designed by True Timber, by Realtree, by Mossy Oak that hides us better than ever. So where does it stop? Are you more honorable? Do we start wearing possibly a blue shirt or a white shirt? Well, that wouldn't work because maybe that just would lure a turkey in and be unsafe. But it would damn sure change the perspective that a turkey could see you. So maybe you lay flat on your stomach, possibly on a bed of nails to kill the same turkey. But somehow, some way, the same guy that's pissed off with the guy now used the decoys and be just as mad because he's laying down versus not exposing his uncamouflaged wardrobe. So you see, I'm not sitting here saying that I dislike a technique. I'm not sitting here saying that I don't respect you for hunting a certain way. I'm not saying I don't respect the fisherman that goes out that literally licks his fingers, sticks it up in the air, realizes the wind's blowing out of the west, and all of a sudden the water temperature is 65, and so a certain color of bait, and this is the day to use the Kevin Van Dam technique of off the ledge, and maybe it's a crankbait, and let's go get after them, but I'm dare not going to see if they're there based on my live radar or sonar, whatever it's called. What I'm saying is, if the fish are in trouble, whether you catch them based on instinct or with technology, then I think it'd be a good goal to just not catch a fish that day. Or better yet, if there's no fish in the river, who is going to fish? Who has ever fished in a pond with no fish? Nobody. Unless it's maybe on a movie and they're acting like they're catching fish. So when it gets to hunting, somehow we have all more common ground than we realize. It's just some of us hide on identity of pretending that we don't want to kill a turkey and that we're very remorseful. But why are you remorseful? Are you remorseful that you took a life? Or are you remorseful that you can't get the vindication and the dopamine rush to see it happen again? And I think that's what's remorseful, is the fact that that fish you won't catch tomorrow. Whether he went and back to Lake Crisco, like Bo Jackson talks about, and he's in your stomach, or whether he's sore mouth and maybe will never hit the topwater frog again. You're not remorseful you took a life. You're remorseful because it gets back to your own selfishness of the fact that you want to experience again. Guess what? I'm the same way. When I kill a gobbling turkey, I do have remorse because I know that turkey ain't going to gobble in the morning. I never go home at night and feel like I sinned by feeding my family this turkey and that I enjoyed killing him. I'm selfishly remorseful because I won't have a chance to go hunt him again. He's dead. I won't get a chance to do it over again. So we got to be careful when we stand on identity. And it doesn't matter who that person is. Remember old Jimmy Swaggart? He spent his whole life, and I do believe he was a believer, about how bad alcohol, drugs, lust, all these different things, sexual immorality is wrong according to the Bible. He stood on the identity that he was telling us what we should do according to the law of God. He stood pretty Pharisee-like, but it crumbled down when he got caught with prostitutes. His identity was crushed. So I, for one, am not going to be the guy that lecture any man or woman on how they hunt a turkey, how they hunt a deer, whether they use a crossbow, whether they use a gun. I selfishly will be frustrated, probably to the end of my life, hunting with my bow, whether I decide to get traditional, and I hear a gun crack off in the distance, and I realize it's just over the line. Somebody used a rifle when I had committed my whole year to hunting my farm with a traditional or with a bow. Is that guy wrong? Is he a sissy? Is he unworthy? Is he deserving? Yeah, just as much deserving of me. But the only reason I'm frustrated is the fact that he didn't come by me first to give me an opportunity when indeed the guy got him with a 30-06 at 200 yards when I was hoping he would be 30. Who's wrong? Am I wrong for being a little selfish and being a little bothered by it? I don't think so. But it's just like many times, you muster up and you get past your own self and your own desires and your own selfish ambition to be able to muster up the simple words, congratulations. I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying that's the right thing to do. Because at the end, it ain't a problem with the way we kill turkeys. It's in the problem of humanity of how we judge other people's according to thou on how you do it. And so it makes me mad. It makes me frustrated. But at the same time, I understand where you're coming from because I've been that person. I've been the guy who's lectured the neighbor, why are you shooting these young deer? And every time, most of the response is, it's because it was the first time I got a chance to hunt. I just wanted to kill a deer. They weren't after the same thing. They really weren't after a 180-inch buck. They were after a deer. You hear all kind of things out there. What's ruining hunting? I heard the other day a podcast. Baiting is hurting and completely ruining the deer herd in Ohio. Where's the scientific evidence? What they should say is baiting and the opportunity to potentially, in their eyes, make it easier to tag a deer is hurting my chance of killing the same deer. That's what is hurting. So, when you look at our wildlife and fisheries, do a little historical study. It's available to everybody that knows how to get on the internet. Even my 73-year-old dad, Papa Waddell, he can even pull it up. You can also pull up how to build a deck on YouTube, and you can pull up true, accurate historical evidence. Our fisheries and our herds are in the best shape they've ever been. So now we can talk about, well, hunting has been outpriced. It's too much. It's too expensive. I agree with that. It has completely become a rich man's sport, especially if you want to chase a big trophy whitetail or elk. It's expensive. However, the flip side of that, there was a time, and I've lived through this time, there was no value on a whitetail deer. All they were was a nuisance to the farmers. Anybody could hunt them free, only if you would go against the game and fish laws and kill them all for the farmer. You had no respect because you was taking a traditional bow or a compound bow and only chasing a 5.5-year-old deer. As a matter of fact, you wasn't granted permission to hunt that place because you wasn't killing deer. And now we're mad that the farmer or the private landowner, whether he is leasing it out to a non-resident or a resident, people are mad that they can't hunt at will across deeded lines, and they're pissed off at the farmer because now they finally, guess what? Here's the crazy thing. You're not going to believe this. Now put more value on a 5.5-year-old 180 than they do their corn and soybeans. Who put the value on it? Was it the landowner? Or was it you and our selfish desires to kill him? Somehow, through rap music, they become a hell of a value in a diamond earring and Michael Jordan sneakers on shoes, especially those ones you can't find. And there's people that rob, steal, and beg, and there's people that spend every bit of their money on a Rolex watch and some bling, boy, to go out on the town because they showing the rest of the community and the rest of all of us that they are making it in life. Because look at these Jordan sneaks, dog. Look at this. Who put the value on it? The man who mined the diamond or me and you? Who put the value on Gucci? That's retarded and ridiculous what we pay for Louis Vuitton. I'm still mad at it because guess what my wife wants? She don't want to go down the road to the dollar store and pick up something that'll tote her cash, her driver's license, and a couple pack of crackers for her kids that's going to be tapping mom on the shoulder in Jolly Ranchers to tote that same thing that does it good for $25. No. She wants a Louis Vuitton to do the same thing, but it happens to be Louis Vuitton. Probably made in the same factory. Who put the value on it? My wife. Who put the value on a 180-inch deer? Me. Because that's what I desire. So the man that this property that he lives on or the state that he lives on, he has a right because he pays his taxes. He owns a property. He can decide how much he sells his corn and beans for and the deer and the rights to trespass on his properties. It ain't our decision. Now, the flip side of that, guess what there are more of than they ever has been? 180-inch deer. Why? There's a value on it. Anything that has value is protected. So the same people, yes, even the Pharisees of hunting, and yes, even the broke rednecks, we are fighting to protect something that means something to us. The most valuable things I have in my life are my wife and children. And if you ask me would I die for them, without even hesitation, I'd say yes. Why? They have value to me. Extreme value. Sometimes our values get sidetracked. These deer that we're mad that somebody else killed have more value than our loved ones. There's some people that sit there and judge people by ways they live their life, whether they're a drug addict, alcoholic, and they're so mad about how they're living their life. Yet they don't do those things, but they'll walk over their wife, they'll walk over their friend, they'll walk over their neighbor, they'll criticize, they'll go through legal means, they'll do anything and everything to stop this person for having that same opportunity that they think they deserve. And nothing means more to them to one more 180 when the same person they walked over is not going to be impressed, in this case their wife, and it ain't like they're going to have a little romantic night and he's going to walk back in looking like Brad Pitt off River Runs Through It because he freaking caught a fish on a fly and nobody gives a crap. Especially his wife. But somehow we supposed to put him up. We supposed to praise the people and these Pharisees of hunting that tell us how they did it. We supposed to fill their comments up with how wonderful and awesome they are. Yet 2 pages over, a very similar picture. That same person gives him criticizes him when that same person is supposed to tell him how great he is. So if we hunt because we want people to tell us how great we are, that's the wrong damn reason in the first place. We hunt because it's in us and it's what we want to do. So in that, I'm going to close off this rant and I want to answer a few questions because this to me is passionate. I'm not sitting here trying to divide. I'm trying to get us to come together through the eyes of how we all see it. So many of these same people that I see post these things that aggravate me, just like some of the things I post might aggravate them. We all coming from the same place. The only thing is I can admit that I really do want to kill a turkey from time to time. And I will admit that I take a lot more people to kill turkeys now than I shoot turkeys, but I had to learn that. I had to sacrifice some of my self-ambition and greed in order to get to that place. Once I got to that place, I realized there's a better purpose in that than just me. So I'm just saying that's where I come. So it's not like I don't have something uncommon with you. It's not like I don't have something uncommon with Lee Lukoski and Lee Ellis. It's not like I have something uncommon with people like the hunting public that absolutely do a great job of showing how fun it is to hunt with a group of guys and just go out there and hunt public ground. However, whether it's hunting public, whether it's Lee, whether it's Seek One, once we start standing in line of identity, well, what's it going to be for hunting public when they start hunting private ground? What's going to happen when Blake Shelton says, hey, won't you show up with Waddell and y'all come hang out in our camp? That ain't public ground. That's 10,000 acres. It's not high fence, and we have a good time. Is that going to go against your identity? These are things nobody brings up in the hunting industry. And the only reason I do it now is because I'm older and frankly don't care anymore about what somebody says about me. I don't hunt because I'm worried about whether somebody thinks I'm great or whether somebody thinks I suck and then I'm gay because I did it a certain way. I hunt because I'm still selfish. I hunt because I selfishly want my kids to say, Dad, can we go hunting tomorrow? My son Mason is so fired up that his younger brother bought a John boat. He's so praying for his 9-year-old brother to say, hey, big brother, will you take me fishing? He selfishly wants them to love it like he does. Now, what would change would be the fact that he finds out the same place he's fishing that he thought he was the only person that had permission, or possibly he goes to Lake Hardin and he pulls up and there's Gerald Swindell on the hole that he told him about catching the same fish and sore-mouthed him. Now, that's his hero. But that moment in time, his selfish ambition of taking his brother fishing, and maybe he's going to rip a few lips, and when his brother catches these buck bass, he's going to go ahead and catch that 10-pounder, right? But no, guess who ruined it for him? His hero. Gerald Swindell is over there practicing for a tournament to try to win another bass boat and to make money doing it. Who's wrong? My opinion, neither one of them. It's a public waterway. Anybody can fish it. Who's going to get mad at the country family sitting on the bank of West Point when everybody else is out there talking more technical terms about fishing and giving all kind of lines and names and depths and colors and names that didn't even in the English dictionary that we've named these fishing lures, when you get a country family sitting on the bank with a minnow bucket, sitting on a lounge chair with bobbers and just raping them bass, son. I'm talking about they putting them in the boat and they are putting them in the live wells. Well, it ain't no live well. It's a 5-gallon bucket, and them fish are dead in the bucket because they ain't going back in the lake. They fishing for a whole different reason. They don't have no live scope. They ain't got no Phoenix bass boat. They ain't got no 250 horse 4-stroke outboard to get them across the lake at 70 miles an hour. You gonna stop and tell them that they can't do it? Who's right and who's wrong? Nobody. All I'm saying is you got selfish ambition, you got greed, you got selfishness, but don't hide behind conservation. Don't behind because that's the reason you think all the turkeys are dead. You know deep down that's a lie. You just mad because you think that turkey's dead and it would have been the one you'd have got it your way. And who's to say you don't when ain't nobody looking? Pull out your decoy because you know it works. Also, when you stand behind a certain way you think is going to be completely just fish all the lakes out, whether it's using live bait on a public lake, if that was the case, there wouldn't be a fish left in West Point because my pawpaw, I never seen him through a rooster tail. I never saw him throw a spinner bait. I never saw him throw a wacky wig. I never saw him use an artificial lure. He used live bluegill. He used cut bait for catfish, chicken liver at best, but hell, he didn't use them because guess what he did? If he got enough money to buy chicken liver, he wasn't fishing because he was eating chicken liver that night himself that he fried. So how stupid are we to get to this place to where all of a sudden we the Pharisee and we the God and we know the moral high ground? Who are we? You going to go back in time and write a negative chapter about the freaking Cherokee Indians that use headdress and a turkey decoy and dressed as a turkey, dressed as an elk, dressed as a deer, praying not because they was going to put it on social media or somehow they get back, and Hot Littlefoot was going to give them a little loving in the teepee. Hell no. They was trying to bring home some food to eat. Maybe enjoy a little fire water around the campfire. Maybe get them a little fresh scoop of cold water out of the creek. But now, all of a sudden, you are God. You are hubris. You are the one that makes the law. It ain't a law of legal standards. It's a law based on the world according to you. And to me, that's why I call it the Pharisees of hunting. And that's why sometimes I wonder, I read through the Bible, the maddest Jesus got wasn't at the adulterer at the well, wasn't even with the tax collectors, wasn't even with some of these people, but he sure got mad at them Pharisees at the temple, and he flipped the tables in there. We'll read this one last statement and then we're going to move on to equipment. We're going to move on. But this, to me, whether people agree or disagree, I just feel like everybody's opinion is worth sharing. I want to read y'all something. I pulled this up just now. How did Jesus see the Pharisees? Now, people are already saying, you can't compare Jesus to us hunters. No, I'm not doing that. But what I am saying, the most famous man in the world was not Elvis Presley. It was Jesus. You might not believe in him, but I can say if you know what time it is now, what date it is you listen to this, you somehow have to go by the law that there is a Jesus, because it is now 2026 years after the death of Jesus. All right? It says Jesus viewed the Pharisees as hypocritical, self-righteous, and spiritual blind leaders who prioritize human tradition over God's commands. It says, while recognizing their authority, he condemned their external forces and greed and failure to love, and often hindered people from entering the kingdom of heaven. Wow, that sounds familiar. Use the same laws in the Pharisees of hunting to hinder people's joy of entering the space of what the great outdoors, which, by the way, God invented. The hypocrisy. Accuse them of acting and appearing to be righteous outwardly while being full of greed and selfishly inwardly. Am I preaching, or am I just comparing things? Maybe a little of both. Neglecting the heart. He criticized them for focusing on external ritual purity. Wow. Never seen some of these self-righteous fishermen, hunters, and different people on podcasts talking about their self-righteous external ritual purity while neglecting inner righteousness. Legalism over mercy. The Pharisees focused heavily on strict adherence to traditions and laws, missing the core principles of love, mercy, and justice. Now, I want you guys listen to this, read all this as it pertains to hunting. Status seeking. You wouldn't think somebody would be hunting out of these religious and ritualistic ways of the law of looking for status, would you? No, they were accused by Jesus of loving their own honor, wearing special clothing, and enjoying the public praise rather than serving God humbly. Misleading others. Jesus called them blind guides who burden people with rules while failing to teach others the true nature of God. Where are you at in being disciples of the hunting community? Where are you at in trying to show somebody the love of what it's like, of the same self-righteous ambition that we have and the greed that we have to pull the trigger? Where are you at to share that? See, the Pharisees seem to have a hard time with even sharing the love of God because they stood on the law. They stood on the ritual practice. Many cases, we don't stand on the law. We stand on our own ritual. And we think our ritual is the only ritual, and somehow we deserve the status and the praise because we're better. So all I'm saying is, to anybody listening, whether you want to be this way and hate a certain tactic or technique, fishing, hunting, or selfishly taking it for yourself, what I will say is, I particularly am not the law. I'm not practicing this because I think you better do it like me. I never will be that guy. When we feel like, and we know without a shadow of a doubt, our game is in serious danger, it doesn't matter what ritual you use. I think the best way to go about it is to not pull the trigger, to not set the hook. And then we start true conservation. Whether we're doing a dance around the turkey or whether we're sitting there crying because your remorse is death, I say the best way is don't have any sentiment to where you feel either way. The turkey lives on. Because at the end of the day, is it even a necessity? Probably not as a necessity as it was back in the early days, but it still is our God-given right. So with that, that's my rant. I love hunting. I think it's the best thing. I've seen it completely be the best counseling to so many people I've seen dealing with a lot of vices. and I'm not going to be the man that condemns a man or woman how they go about it. Now we get down to the nitty gritty. I want to answer a few questions. I got my son Mason. Ryan Waken is in the room. And what are some questions, Mason? Have you got some questions over there that people have asked?
Absolutely. So
and look, I don't know, I don't know what they could be, man. It completely go against and test my rant that I just did. And once again, stand on my identity, I might get equally aggravated. So let's see.
There's some good ones in here. I can tell you that. And I will preface this by saying you're my father, and it is going to pain me to read some of these questions that I've never known you not to have thick skin, but I'm about to have to ask you to have thick skin.
Oh Lord, is this the mean tweets?
There's some genuine curiosity in here. There's some very positive, more fanfare question, and then there's just straight up personal attacks.
All right.
And so I think in the nature of how this podcast has gone so far, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and just go straight to a personal attack. So again, we asked our Facebook, Instagram, and X following to submit their questions, and again, the team and I have gone through and selected some of the ones we felt the best. So this one comes from Justin Korn on Facebook. This is more of a statement than a question, but we'd like to hear your rebuttal. So Justin Korn says, "It has taken me a while to muster the courage up to say this because I used to be a fan, but you guys have helped to ruin the hunting world, changed it into a money game. Now you want to sit back and talk about hunting, acting like you're for the average hunter. You have no idea what the average hunter has to go through just to find somewhere to hunt. If you think the answer is public land, well then look who comes in, the hunting public, and now they're making hunting public land even harder. All I need is about $2 million so I can have some land to manage and hunt. Oh well."
Well, the last part of that he got right, but it wasn't because me that ruined it. It's because his desire is the same as mine. We desire so bad to hunt. And so what we found, I also desire right now based on my palate. You know what I love more than anything to eat? A ribeye steak. I luckily hadn't crossed the line of Wagyu, but somehow if you look at the price of cows and cattle and the price of beef, a ribeye steak might be the most expensive things to desire. Back in the time, ribeyes wasn't quite as expensive. So one is I completely respect the comments, and I can see that it comes out of aggravation and anger and maybe how it used to be versus how it is now. And so I'm not mad at Mr. Korn's statements or comments, even though I will say, no pun intended, that some of it is a little corny. I will say, and maybe that's fitting, right? Well, at the end of the day, no, I have not sought to ruin the hunting industry. But I also would take responsibility in the people that I have shared my passion with that has passionately now involved themselves into the space that maybe didn't before. I can't say that I'm not a capitalist, and I can't say that I haven't hard thought and worked to create better product and work with the manufacturers to make better product, to make hunting more fun. And in some cases, easier to attain filling a tag. And so with that, I can take responsibility in the fact that have I tried to work toward inventing and creating things based on my own desires to be successful, that I could pass that same product and knowledge over to anybody who watches for the average. And as it pertains to the average hunter, that is a complete lie to say I'm pretending. And for him to have to say I'm pretending is an act that he went to a conclusion, because one thing about me, I don't give a shit, and so I never pretend. I'm too old and I'm too much of a jerk in certain aspects of how I feel not to to be self-transparent in my feelings. I don't have to act. I'm not an actor. If I was an actor, I would be probably sitting around talking to Richard Gere and Brad Pitt on what the art of acting is, and then I could be a true pretender. I'm not a pretender. In anything I've done, whether it's a mistake or something positive, I can own either one of those. And I promise I have just as many failures and mistakes that I've made as I have had in celebrating good decisions. So from an average hunter, I grew up a very average hunter. I still feel like an average hunter, but then when I get above myself and I look down, I realize I don't get to do things on average. That's the reason this whole podcast and this rant is about the fact that we as average people get condemned the most. And so in this case, you're feeling the wrath of what this hunting industry has become and what the cost of goods have become. And yes, I can take the blame in what we have done, along with my buddies at Hunting Public, who have showed even me how valuable and good that we have in resources of public ground to hunt. I can also show that Major League Fishermen and Bassmasters has also showed the American public that, yes, you can go to public lakes and catch a 30-pound bag of fish. You don't have to have the backyard pond that has just been fed shad every day of their life, and you find out there's not even any male bass. They're all females that are just there to catch, take a picture, and throw them back. But you can indeed go to lakes all across this country and have an amazing experience. And if you look, there's a lot more bass boats on the lake because of high school fishing, college fishing, and the exposure of MLF, Bassmasters, and the different things we see. I see it and I get excited. I can also say that the excitement of me watching motocross has also led to my well-earned money to buy very overpriced dirt bikes for my kids as well as myself, and the gear that is associated with it, because what a jerk Ricky Carmichael was is to put the passion, and an asshole he was to put the passion of wanting to ride a dirt bike like him, only to find out that the only thing that becomes more expensive is when I break my back and my leg and my kid's got a head that's got a big knot on it, and his mama puts a knot on my head because I'm the one that overspent on a dirt bike and turned around and got him freaking hurt on the same dirt bike, pretending that he could become Ricky Carmichael, that maybe I should just blame it all on Ricky Carmichael or James Stewart. I'm not doing it. Can't say I'm not still frustrated that Michael Jordan pretended if I bought a pair of $100 sneakers, I could jump as high as him, only realized he lied. And I can't jump and I can't play basketball. Only the fact that I may be cool with the cool kids because daddy got a pair of Air Jordans on. Had nothing to do with that. So do I hate him or just say this man made me feel a certain way? So with that, even though it's a little bit weird an illustration I'm giving, I don't think one thing can be blamed on anything. I think it's evolution. I think in evolution, nothing stays the same. So regardless if it was me, and I completely can hold your anger and I will take it, and I respectfully love it. I guarantee you, if we met, that we could sit and have a beer and we'd laugh and find way more in common, and you'll find out that I love it just as you do, and I've been blessed with more opportunities. But those opportunities come with hard work and sacrifice. And I didn't dedicate myself to nothing else but one day making a living in this hunting space. So you can hate me for that, but I could also be just as disappointed at you because you probably every bit the hunter I am, but you decided to take a different route, and now you're sitting here in a place of pissed off and bitter and pissed off at me because I'm doing something you wished you would have done, and now you think it's because of me and Hunting Public has outpriced you. And if that's the case, I guess you got to live with it, and I'll send you a box of Band-Aids.
Great answer. All right, let's keep moving here. This is from Jason Lawson. Why are DNRs burning woods in late March and all of April, then saying they know that they burn up turkey eggs, but it doesn't affect the population decline?
Yeah, that's not a dumb statement, because I sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time, ponder some of these same questions. By rule of thumb, I think the general populace of DNR and their divisions across our United States are doing a great job. However, there are some things that's completely out of my understanding, especially when I look at the amount of money I know we as a company, as Bone Collector, and some of my friends and volunteers put back into conservation with NWTF, into the state agencies, into Turkeys for Tomorrow, of trying to raise awareness about certain trapping practices, habitats, only to find that you'll see sometimes on the public ground, which is managed by the DNR, who are supposed to know by their biologists more about turkeys and reproductive cycles and photoperiodism and certain biological situations, just to better our resources, whether it's fisheries and our, in this case, hunting, why we would ever think about burning property in late April or May. Now, if it's an industrial situation and somebody has that deed and they want to burn it, well then, and they have no concern of the wildlife, then I don't know where that falls. I think that would be somebody that obviously has no concern of environmentalism whatsoever, and it's only about their timber and cutting it and making the dollar on it, which I guess by American standards, there's nothing we can do about that. But when it comes to DNR doing those practices, and only to possibly, I haven't seen that statement to say that it really doesn't hurt the population, I think would be false. The only thing they could come back with is the fact that those same turkeys that their nest to burn up will have opportunity to breed again and possibly get on a nest and maybe hatch those same turkeys later in June up into July. But through research that I found, even talking to Dr. Whiteman at NWTF, they found that the first time that hen lays is her best opportunity to hatch and brood those poults that she hatches. So I don't understand that. And there's a lot of things within the biologist community that I think sometimes we don't do a good enough job of conversing with the guy that maybe has a master's or a doctorate versus the guy that has a master's and doctorate in just good old boy country wisdom and logic with our fisheries, with our hunting across the country, because there's a lot of things that we keep doing the same old thing every year and just expect the same or different results. And to me, that's another one of those old-timey analogies. You know, somebody that does the same thing over and over and expect the same different results is just pure ignorance. And I see that happening in some cases across the board. And so I think there's a lot to be learned with some of these same people that hate the fact of the private landowner and the practices they have. And if you look at a lot of the private landowners that come up with their own medical resources, it's no different than our medical world. You know, if you start getting into the debate about, you know, COVID or a vaccine or certain different things, there's certain households that's figured out that they could be healthier eating a certain way or being medicated a certain way by natural measures or different things that maybe is better than what the supposedly smarter people know. That doesn't always translate in every case, but I do see it in our wildlife and fisheries. I think there's some good, hard, solid, very knowledgeable country boys that don't have a degree, but they know a lot about our resources based on the predation, based on what they're seeing, and based on certain situations, whether it pertains to CWD or in this case, burning land late in April. So that is something that I think is worth bringing up and asking better why. And sometimes the answer does not have to be accepted, because if that's the case, I know for a fact if you're getting on a bush hog in late April and you are burning property in late April and May, you are no doubt burning up turkey nest, and not only burning the habitat up that they would need at that time. Now turn around and burn that in January, February, you're doing nothing but helping the habitat and helping the turkeys. But there's nothing that I see that would be beneficial to a turkey to burn in late April or May, based on what I know.
All right, this next question, it was on X, comes from @DuckyFresh2.
Ducky Fresh.
Yeah, that's a good name.
I loved his rap music, man.
Thought a lot about this one, Waddy. In social media today, so many folks focused only on the outcomes of the hunt. But what is your process for overcoming your misses and getting back to yourself or getting back engaged for that next opportunity?
Bro, first of all, man, I would like to say I don't have a lot of pride, but I have an extreme amount. And I always have thought pride is dangerous, because once again, it gets back into that whole whatever long I ranted on identity, because your pride becomes your identity and every time it'll go against you. And so I take a lot of pride in not missing. However, nobody's going to believe this, but I missed a lot. Missed turkeys, missed deer. And for those who love it like I do, which you're asking that question because you probably do love it like I do, it is literally, as ridiculous as it sounds, feels like a death in the family. It really does. There's people that miss a big bass on a top water, and even if that fish was 4 pounds, I promise you that one they missed in their mind to the day they die would have been a 12-pound world record, so or state record. So the way you overcome it is, it sounds so simple. It is the fact that in that moment you went from a hero to a complete zero. And so obviously it's just flipping the script, because it takes all your confidence. Next thing you know, you get to a place to where what you used to feel when you walked in the woods, any deer that come by you at 45, 50 yards was dead. You've been out there shooting in the yard. You've been shooting them targets. Boy, you are shooting like Robin Hood, but all of a sudden you're still shooting good, but you missed your opportunity. Maybe it was a chip shot and you blew it. So now you have no confidence. So it takes all your killing skill and all that innate ability to just be a killer, and then you become a watcher, and then you let deer come by you, or you don't even want to go. So to overcome it, for me, and I'm lucky to live in a state like Georgia, all of our crew here do it. I would say get out in the woods and get in a food plot, whether it's over a bait pile, and then take your bow if it's a miss from a bow, and go and shoot you a doe procure some meat for your family, and to get back in a cycle to where you start feeling some confident. But don't give up. And that's an uncomfortable feeling, but no matter who you are or how good you are, you're still going to miss. And somehow figure out a way to celebrate that you still are that excited, or maybe made a complete dumb mistake, maybe forgetting to aim, maybe not getting a range, maybe completely punching your trigger or pulling back your bow and shoot the air off in the sky. Don't even know what happened. I've even heard of people on bull elk where they're pretty good bow hunters and they forget to even put an arrow in their bow. Literally pull back and they realize they didn't even put an arrow in their bow. They didn't miss. They never even loaded their gun. Their bow was on safety the whole time. So the beauty of that, the way I've overcome it, is somehow sit down and once I get through feeling sorry for myself, marvel in the fact of how much I still love it and the passion, and how literally I have no control over it that much, and I still get completely shook to the core. But then when I do come back from it and I'm able to still push through those nerves and that emotion and be able to deliver a shot, I feel good again. But I realize that I'm always on the ragged edge of disaster and making terrible mistakes. And I think that's what makes hunting great. So yeah, man, I feel your pain, bro, but dig in and keep going, man. Keep going up the hill, man. The choo-choo train who knew he could. And so just got to somehow find the courage and the strength and the self-awareness and knowing that you have been there before and you will get past it and you will be successful again. So.
All right. This next question is from @ZippyAlini fan on X. Honestly,
you say X or OnlyFans? That's
yeah. It's on X. Actually, I don't even know who that is. So hopefully,
I don't know if I'm gonna answer this, and my wife might watch this podcast.
So Zippy says, honestly, how successful would most quote unquote celebrity hunters be if they had to do all the work themselves? Not saying you specifically, but the entire group.
Yeah.
The prep, the scouting, planning, stand placement, habitat creation, etc. I truly feel most couldn't hack it.
Yeah, that's a very fair question. And because from that sentiment, I question the same thing on some hunting personalities and some shows. However, the ones that I catch myself talking to a lot, I catch myself talking to them out of two reasons. One is I like them, and they offer some type of entertainment to me when I get a chance to catch up with them and their family. And the number one reason, I respect them. So I could give a list of names of those that I know that would not have a problem at all succeeding, that completely are unbelievable woodsmen. They're unbelievable hunters, and they would be completely fine if they had zero help, because you got to understand, for some of these guys that made it to that level, this is all they had. They was just a one-track mind. They didn't think about anything else in their life. They didn't go to school, many of them. They didn't have a backup heating and air degree. They didn't have knowledge on how to frame a house. They didn't have knowledge on how to sell insurance or be a school teacher. They just knew somewhere along the way, whether they were good or bad, that they wanted to do this. And so everything they put aside and sacrificed so much to get there. So through that process, if you love it that much or that dedicated, you would have to be completely, one is you would never be successful. And then second of all, you have to learn some things along the way. So when I think of people, I use people like a Fred Eichler, Lee Lukoski. I can throw Lee Ellis in this. I can use probably somebody like a Cameron Haynes. I could use probably even a Ranella and some of those guys that hunt from a different construct. I do think they'd be successful. At what level is that success? Would they consistently kill the same deer that they kill if it's a Lukoski? If he had to hunt Georgia? No, he wouldn't at all. And would it be tough on him because it'd be a different culture of what he's used to? He wouldn't have the same resources. But could Lee Lukoski, could you turn him loose on some public ground? Could he finally figure out where to hunt deer? Zero bait, zero food plots, not planting corn, beans, not at all having trail cameras? The answer would be yes, he would be successful. At the same level of what he's doing now? No. But are they capable? Yes, 100%. Fred Eichler, you definitely want to be with that guy on Survivor Island. That dude can not only does he know the woods, he knows wildlife, but he can skin, clean, pack. He can do everything. He can trap. He is very well-rounded. And the list goes on, and I'm leaving out so many people, like in the turkey world. No, Eddie Salter don't need you scouting a turkey farm. No, Eddie Salter will find a turkey if he lives there. Just tell him where he can hunt, give him a day, he'll tell you if there's any in there. I think the same would be safe with a Kevin Van Dam in the fishing world. He'll tell you if you got a good private lake. You don't have to tell him if it's good or bad. Give him 5 hours in there and he'll tell you this place is amazing or it sucks, there ain't a big bass out here. Why? Because he knows how to find fish. Same would be the case with some of these guys who have an inherent ability, and it's not because they were just born with it. In some cases, they were born pretty good hunters, but just like a lot of these guys, and even you, I guarantee you're a hell of a hunter. And so, yeah, now you flip the script, and you had the same opportunity to now hunt a farm that Lee Lukoski has set up. You, too, would kill a 190, 200-inch deer. So it ain't about the hunting. It's about what it took to get to that level of having land like that. I found that hunting is the easy part. Having the finances and figuring out how to have your own deeded land and having opportunities like that are the hardest to come by. It's not hunting. Hunting is easy once you get the setup right. Fishing is easy once you got the right lake. It's a little bit easier to go down to, fish Lake El Salto in Mexico and catch a 10-pound bass than it is to go to somewhere in Michigan and catch the same largemouth. It's simply because a fish is there and one there's not. So overall, I would say a lot of people in the hunting industry are solid hunters. Now, there's some I hunted with, and I'm not going to go as far as be critical and say, no, some of the worst hunters I ever hunted with, the people that claim to be the best, and they got shows, and I'm telling you, a lot of them couldn't hunt their way out of a wet paper sack unless they had somebody to show them how to where the exit of that sack is. And I think that's fair to say. And that's just a fact. But overall, I think a lot of these names that you know the most that you would say kind of like their shows, even if you have some negative thoughts about maybe where they get a chance to hunt and outfitters and places they get to go venture and trespass on. Yeah, you wouldn't want them hunting deer on your property. If you had private property, you wouldn't want Philip Culpepper hunting turkeys on your place. I promise you, you would not want Kevin Van Dam fishing your lake prior to your kids getting a chance to fish it. And you would not let them be a member of your hunting club because they're going to kill something. Most of them. I can give you a list of names on the side if private, and I'll tell you some good rich people that can't hunt. That'd be some good members of your hunting club. They ain't going to kill nothing, not unless you put them in a stand.
This question comes from Spence Peepaw Rowe on Facebook. What's some bad experiences you've had on guided hunts or hunts that you would never do again?
Bro, I've been to Washington State, and I was supposed to be hunting deer with my buddy David Blanton, and we were supposed to be hunting these alfalfa fields, only to find out when you get to Washington State, you can legally bait. And I remember there was a pile of apples piled up around a pine tree, and we didn't see a deer for 2 days. And I told David, I said, this is a bad experience. I thought we was going to be hunting alfalfa, and I said, hell, we up here hunting pineapple trees. And we left. That was a bad experience. I've been in places to where one particular, I went on a bear hunt and ended up, I think we were hunting over on some property that we later found out was before, the Spartan Forge apps and the different apps that you can look on your phone, look at property lines, and come to find out we wasn't even hunting in legal places, and the places we was hunting bear, they had just put the stand up, and we was just basically being set in stands and really with no intentions of really killing bear. And then later on, it didn't take long. There was a guy that had bought a hunt alongside me, and one of the guys got a little mouthy, and then next thing you know, this guy that I think was from New Jersey had bought the hunt. They got in a big fist fight and broke every mount in the whole lodge, and it was like I was getting to see a chance of the first UFC bout between a paid hunter and a guide. And I don't know who won. They both had shiners on their eyes, and I just remember thinking maybe I could take one of these tail feathers. This turkey fan, they broke off this Merriam and use it when I go turkey hunting Merriams out west. That was selfishly what I was thinking. But yeah, I've had just as many bad experiences as good. I will say in the world of outfitting, that gets very controversial because some people think, oh man, if you can't do it on your own, you can't do it, you shouldn't do it. Or they think that maybe the guy that got to hunt with an outfitter got his hand held. I don't think that's fair because you know what, you have a wedding. A lot of times you get a wedding planner. If you make a trip and you book a trip to Italy tomorrow, or you go on vacation, a lot of times you have somebody to walk you through and figure out where you need to stay, give you some ideas of where to eat. So in the world of outfitting, it's not a guarantee. It does make it easier logistically because you can pay a certain amount of money, and you got trespassing fees, and you got somebody who knows a little more than you because you don't even live in the state. You know, you could be 700 miles away. And then they have a place that you can stay. A lot of times, not in all cases, they either have a tent or they might have running water. You'll have food secured, so it cuts down the expenses of you still got to have those same things, or maybe you would have to buy that same tent. But through this outfitter, they are indeed outfitting you. So it's no different than an Airbnb when you go to a town for your travel baseball team. At least somebody you can pay to secure your house. So many times the outfitting is the fact, even if the hunting isn't great or any more easy, a lot of these outfitters are set up on public ground. So you're not paying for them to guarantee you kill something. You're paying for a logistics that you just can put out of your mind. Room and board, a truck that's going to be there for you that somebody can ride you around. I've been with guides that I'm telling you that are absolutely amazing. Some of the best hunters I've ever hunted with was guides out west. But I've also been with guys that had a nice pickup truck to get you, and they didn't know nothing about an elk. They might not ever see none. I'd be better off to go talk to the mailman who delivers mail every day to figure out where maybe a bugling elk will be found. But here's what I did come with the situation. I had a nice place to stay. I had food in the pantry, and I typically had at least 2 squares a day that was cooked for me. So call me a sissy for securing that, but that was one more thing that I took out of my logistics that I'm not good at because I'm not that great a cook. If I could travel with my wife every time, I would probably not lose any weight. But if I'm cooking for myself, I'd probably be my best diet plan.
All right, we'll do just a few more. We're running a little long here, but I got one more from a follower, and then I had a couple I wrote down that I wanted to ask you personally as well. So this one comes from probably the best username I've ever heard, @Carpital Punishment on X.
Carpital,
because he's a bow fisherman.
I love it.
He says, not sure if I've ever heard your opinion on bow fishing. Personally, I'm addicted to it.
Bro, that to me, something like bow fishing, man, that's a heck of a question. I do remember seeing that on X come through. That is a heck of a question because bow fishing solves a lot of problems. Now, you're still going to get in controversial subjects because a lot of the people on the lakes, especially at night, hate these people out there and these lighted up, airboats and rigs and bow fishing. But you can get into that decently inexpensive. And I say that, well, not if you go get, the airboat and you do it like my buddy Tommy does, who's won the world championship a few times. And you know this because if your name's at Carpital Punishment, you probably have invested quite a bit of money in rigs. But literally, I remember, speaking of Mason, we got him a little John boat, and man, we rigged that thing up, went to Lowe's. I think we bought a bunch of LEDs, and me and him and Nick Munt. And then a lot of times the boat wasn't big enough for me, him and Nick. So a lot of times Nick, being the game hog he would go fishing, and I'd sit back and make the cheeseburgers. True story, right, Mason?
And Nick would hog the front deck, and
I'd
be running the trolling motor.
So typically I would give Nick one of my cigars to keep the mosquitoes away, and Mason would use his gas, and he would guide Nick Munt on Lake Hardin, and they would go shoot fish. And I promise you, Mason, I don't even know what the boat costs. I remember I got it for you for your birthday one year, but we might have had another $50-$60 in lights. And an old beat up Hoyt that we rigged into a bow fishing bow. And so to me, bow fishing falls in that thing. Not only is exhilarating and fun, but you find yourself a little more free. Obviously, you're not shooting bass. You're not shooting what you would consider trophy fish. You're shooting these buffalo. You're shooting these carps, alligator gar, or just gar in general. And it's just fun. It's just like squirrel hunting. And so I think things like that, if you're looking for something to do, that when you got bogged down with the expense of chasing a big whitetail or elk or even turkey, you can get your John boat and you can go bow fish, and it is still fun. I love it. I don't do it as much, mainly because call it lazy. I've gotten older, and now 9 or 10 o'clock, I'm ready to go to bed. The thought of going out and fishing all night is a little tougher on me because typically I'm still wanting to get up and go deer hunting or turkey hunting. So I don't do it as much as I used to, but I do love bow fishing. I think it's an amazing, amazing discipline in sport, and I got a lot of respect for those guys at bow fish that are good at it. Them dudes, bro, they can hit a fish. And what I liked about it too is I shot a lot with zero success. I was terrible at it, and so I like being around people that are good at fishing those underwater, carp and stuff. It's fun to watch.
Hey, one more thing on that. You mentioned game hog Nick. What about when Nick lived on Lake Harding and we had the feeding ring on our dock, and he had Paradise Cove over there?
Yes, this is a true story. And so I'm glad you brought that up, man. Yeah, Nick Munt, he moved to Georgia one time. We lived on Lake Hardin at the time, which is a public reservoir. And we had a house, and I was raising Mason, his brothers and sister there. Nick decided he loved the lake, and so he was a gypsy, so he bought a place on the river. And so Nick literally never bought a boat. Remember, he'd paddle that canoe. It must have been 5 miles. He'd paddle a canoe over to our house, and then we'd take our boat over to his house, and he'd cook us breakfast. So Nick would paddle his canoe all the way over to our dock, and he would hang out with Mason. One thing, he was always trying to get him a band up, and he was going to be the lead singer. Mason was going to be the lead guitar player. The problem was Mason was 12, Nick was 36. So that always was a little bit of a weird deal, but he was always on Mason and his buddies to practice the craft so they could go play these bars. And I would always say, like, I don't know that Mason can go play the bars. I don't know if he's league enough to get in. I don't know. But then he would come to our house, and we had made, Mason and I and his pawpaw had made this little feeding ring, and we realized we could start feeding floating catfish food right off our dock, and we anchored it down, and we could have these channel cat, mud cats and all this stuff, and even carp. Remember, they'd come up on our, and every night we'd feed them at the same time. Mason would get from school, and he'd go throw that. And it was just fun to watch, you know. And so guess who did the same thing? Nick Munt. But the difference is Nick would come to our dock and shoot our fish, but then you could go to his, you'd take your bow over to his dock, like, man, I don't really shoot them down here in my place.
Totally off limits.
It'd be off limits every time.
He was also feeding mealworms. He'd go to the pet store and get live mealworms and throw them to his little blue belly lizards and stuff on his porch.
Oh, yeah. He was Jacques Cousteau at his place. Then he was freaking Philip Culpepper on turkeys at our place. He would just rape it, son. He'd kill everything we had and then go back to his Paradise Cove.
It was a high fence over there on
True
Lake
story,
Hardy.
Nick. Truth hurts, man. You know we love you. We know you love you. We love you, Nick. So.
All right. Well, we can go honestly as long as
you got any other really like bad ones,
offensive ones.
Offensive, like
I can comb through. I had a few that I wanted to ask you, and some of them are not necessarily hunting related, just stuff that I know that I kind of wanted to ask you. Let me ask you just a few things, and then maybe we can close with a few more of those maybe tougher questions, and
okay,
and then close it out. So I wanted to ask you this. Obviously, growing up, rock and roll, old country music was a big part of growing up. You always had some Hank Jr. or some Def Leppard or something cranked in the truck anytime, whether you were taking me to the stand or picking me up from school, whatever. It was usually something to get you pumped up at all times. But I wanted to ask you, if you knew you were going to be on a deserted island or desert island, what 5 artists would you bring to the island with you as far as music?
That actually is pretty easy for me. I would say for sure Leonard Skinner. You could just throw me any random album. Sackett Helping, pronounced Leonard Skinner would probably be my 2 favorite. And it would be a lot of those songs that a lot of people don't know. Everybody thinks Sweet Home Alabama, but there's any Leonard Skinner song is amazing to me. Hank Williams Jr., by far, the Wild Man, the Rockabilly, Bo Cephas. And there's something about just playing so many of the Hank Jr. tracks that just freaking bring back the youth and just, I don't know, make me feel good. If I'm going to talk about Hank, I'd have to have Waylon Jennings. I love Waylon Jennings. I love Waylon Jennings enough to know that your brother, your last brother we had there, we named him Waylon. And I think people asked me, did I name him after Waylon Jennings? And my thought was no, but I dang sure love Waylon Jennings. So it would be Waylon Jennings. I would also, for sure, have an AC/DC album. If I ever need motivation, it dang sure ain't going to be some rap or hip hop or some of that techno. That only makes me depressed and makes me think about jumping off a building more. I would rather listen to some true rock and roll. AC/DC. Van Halen, I love. And this probably throw a lot of people off. One album I would definitely have would be Muddy Waters. I love freaking blues, man. Like even back to the Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters. And I would definitely also, in the mix of that, have a Blake Shelton album in that too. Not because I like our music, but to realize that he's more stupid than I am, and I would love to hear him sing his music just because of that reason. Zero enjoyment in listening to his music, all because I just like him and know that whatever I'm doing stupid, he's probably somewhere on a different island doing something stupider than me. Yeah.
Nice.
And then I'd probably, now his wife, Gwen Stefani, I'd probably have that out of just the pure joy of the music. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's solid picks.
Yeah.
And I think them would be ones that you could keep list, like I said, Deserted Island, you'd have a lot of time on your hands.
Yeah.
So that's good picks. I had this. Who is your biggest hunting idol of all time from when you were a kid to now?
For me, it was Chuck Adams. When it come to bow hunting, I literally thought if I had some XX78 aluminum shafts, those Super Slam arrows, I felt like I could just shoot them up in the air and hit a deer. That proved to be false. But Chuck Adams, I just idolized him. I thought he was amazing. And in the turkey hunting world, which I say I had a lot of turkey hunting heroes, Paul Butsky was my guy, man. Paul Butsky, I just thought was the ultimate guy. Dick Kirby was another one. And both ironic in the fact that I am Southern bred all the way. And both Paul Butsky and Dick Kirby were both from New York. In the same sentiment, a Southern turkey hunter that I just loved to death was Eddie Salter. I loved Eddie Salter. Other big game people, just like many my age, people like Fred Bear, so iconic, not just in his ability to hunt, but also in his ability when you learn more about what he did and how he shared so many patents for the growth of the archery. So even though he was a capitalist and made a lot of money through his kind of revolutionary tactics of inventing better bows, compound bows in particular, he made money, but he also helped other people make a lot of money at the risk and sacrifice of his own financial means by growing the sport of archery. So Fred Bear was also a big hero. And then I also looked up to Noel Feather. I didn't know that some of those deer he was shooting were pin raised. I didn't know that, but I thought Noel was just the man. I thought he always smoked them. He made the best shot. So I definitely looked up to Noel a lot. And even though he got caught a little bit with his hand in the cookie jar and doing some crazy stuff, I still think within me, I still feel like he was still probably, if you got past it, I never got a chance to sit and talk with him, I feel like he was a pretty good hunter, him along with the Fitzgeralds and stuff like that. So, yeah, and that's just a few. There's a lot more, man. The hunting guys were my athletes, man. I love hunting. I mean, Joe Drakes, people like that. They were amazing, iconic people to me.
Heck yeah. Why don't let's do two more questions. I had one. This is something I've been curious about, like going on just my first few elk hunts and trying to piece together the puzzle of like just how to hunt an elk. You watch videos and stuff, but until you're there, it's just a different ball game.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, with you being from the South, obviously Booger Bottom, Georgia, we ain't got no elk running around. We got a lot of turkeys. But how did you get over the learning curve of trying to learn to hunt elk? Because like I said, you watch videotape, but until you get out there and you start, especially when you got a bow in your hand, trying to understand how to get them animals into range, and they got a nose that can smell. And how did you learn to master the art of elk hunting over time, how did you get better at elk hunting so quick as a Southern guy? Man,
that's a good question. And even before I answer that, I do want to go back on that music thing and say, if somebody clips this, to make sure to put in, I actually do like Blake's music, but I know the way he would have answered that when it come to me about hunting, and that's our sarcastic friendship that we have. And nobody would think we're friends if they saw our text thread, because it's just hammering on each other all the time. You've experienced that. But when it comes to elk hunting, and then I will now call another friend's name that I respect much, Cameron Haynes. I've heard Cameron where he says, I've always said an elk is a 700-pound turkey. All right, well, Cameron's like, man, there's no way. Me and him have had this over a bowl of chili, like literally like, you can't compare a turkey to an elk. Well, what I can compare is you could drop me and a good Southern turkey hunter off in the Rocky Mountains where there's bugling elk, and they will end up killing an elk. I could guarantee, and I would do this, and I've asked him to do it, I could turn Cameron loose with a turkey call. And even though he can run way further than me in a tract of land in Alabama, and he would not kill a turkey. I feel confident about that. Now, is one more special than the other? Well, yeah, an elk is majestic. 700 pounds of protein you procure when you get the elk. You got huge antlers, so they got that sentiment of a whitetail. But the communications and the same cultural manipulation that you putting on them based on the breeding cycle. Now, when it comes to late season elk, I'm not a good late season elk hunter, but in those September months when they're rutting, I basically hunt elk exactly like I do turkey, except I do it with a wind checker and I'm working the wind. So it's somewhere like calling in coyotes and completely manipulation, just like you do a turkey. And one could say, well, you're better off to be in better shape. And so, that's where the edge is in athletic ability. And that could be true. But also, you got to think the elk is always going to be in better shape. So in the manipulation and understanding the habitat and where they're going, what they're using, you can still use their shape to help you out, especially if you can get around on them on angles. So you can hunt smart instead of hard. But inevitably, elk hunting is going to be harder. So it would be like a turkey hunt in West Virginia hills. You're going to walk and burn some calories. And it is definitely easier when you're in shape and on top physical condition, and you can shoot and handle your bow and arrow well. But what I like about elk is the fact that it is an offensive approach. It's manipulation. It is completely understanding what that elk's desire is to do, which is to breed cows and to exert his dominance on everything else. So that's no different than a big strutting tom once you find him and he gives his position away. So for me, the transition of hunting elk, even early in my career, it was the easiest obstacle. I felt like that was an easier obstacle for me to overcome than it was even some of these big bucks in different states, because I felt like I didn't have any control over certain situations. In other words, if I didn't know it, I had no control of a deer walking by me outside of maybe seeing them cruising the edge of a CRP and maybe calling them in using a decoy or something like that. So anything that you could call and manipulate, for some reason, those transition of me being a hunter have always been the easiest part of what has went toward what I feel like I'm pretty good at. And so even though I'm from Georgia, didn't grow up around elk, man, I mean, I would say it's in the high 20s, 30. Careful as to how I say it, because it's going to make me sound illegal on how many elk I killed with a bow and arrow, not counting the ones I had a chance to guide people to. But I just took to that in a very natural, outside of the thermals in the mountains. I had to learn a lot about how those thermals swirled, how they rose, how they fell. And I also will say I was sucking air in that high altitude, and I couldn't move as fast as some of my buddies like a Cameron out there. But to me, I hate to say easy, it felt easier than some of the other things that I chase out of my comfort. And it was out of my comfort beginning, but once I started realizing and thinking of turkey hunting and thinking that they can smell, the way you took advantage of their dominance, the way you took advantage of their desire to breed, and their habits of going up the mountain a lot of time to bed in the mornings and coming back down in the valleys to feed, it was able to take everything I knew about the big game I hunted, primarily deer and turkey, to use it for my advantage. And so for me, that was easy. But I find that same story, especially from a lot of southern guys who hunt good spots for elk. They naturally just adapt to it and they find success. It might take them a couple years, but once they start figuring out those little small intricacies, they start finding crazy success because they usually are a little bit more aggressive. They know when to set back, but they know when it's time to get in there and just freaking get in there and get aggressive and get him shot. I used my buddy David Blanton. He was a good turkey hunter, hell of an elk hunter. David kills big elk, and the way he does it, he just has a really uncanny ability to know when to walk right in there into the herd, to stalk right in and get a shot on big bulls, and he's killed a lot of them. And so David is so humble, he would never even admit that he's a great hunter in anything, but I would say he's a great elk hunter because he knows when to be aggressive. He's physical enough to walk and persevere through the hard elements. And so therefore, I think when you combine those two things and you grew up hunting turkeys, even though Cameron and I can disagree on this, I can feel pretty solid to guarantee there's a lot of similarities. And if you're good at elk hunting, you will be good at turkey hunting. So you can let the 20 pounds versus 700 pounds get in your way, and people think turkeys are dumb. A bull elk is very dumb. He's the horniest thing on the mountain. He's hungry. He's horny. he is oblivious to everything unless he's a subordinate. And so he totally is the most arrogant jerk on the mountain. He is not going to breed a cow. He's going to breed them all, and he's going to kill every other bull on the mountain if he gets opportunity. Now, the subordinate's a little tougher because he's more leery and he's paying attention. Those satellite bulls are more privy to kind of sneak around just like a subordinate turkey. But if you can get past the cows, the biggest bull on the mountain, you can kill because he is completely self-consumed. He is like P. Diddy at his white party. He ain't worried about nobody, does what he wants, and therefore they get real stupid. And a big bull elk can get real stupid just like P. Diddy.
Heck yeah. Cool. I think this may be a good one to end it on, and again, we could go forever. This is fun. I think it's a good kind of philosophical question to end it on, because this is, to me it answers kind of all the clutter that you hear in the different opinions. In your opinion, why do we hunt ultimately? For the most part, we no longer have to kill to survive, so why do we still do it?
I truly think it's a primal instinct. However, everybody don't share that primal instinct, but I always say everybody, by our Creator, which I firmly believe in, gave all of us human beings a canine tooth, just like a dog, just like a wolf, just like a lion. And I don't think he intended for us to just eat a sweet pea or green bean. So in that, even though we don't have to hunt for our food like we used to, I would say a high majority of all human beings use protein, which is flesh, which is the protein that comes off the animals that the good Lord put here for us. So I think somehow it's an inherent behavior in humans, being that we kind of are at the top of the food chain, unless we visit certain countries, that we realize that we're a little bit inferior when it comes to survival. You know, whether it's Alaska and those big brown bear, maybe in Africa when you look at elephant and Cape buffalo and the dangers that they can certainly kill you like that. But at the end of the day, I look at it no different than my trusty squirrel dogs. There's something in them that just tree squirrels. Did I teach that dog how to tree a squirrel? Was I taught to hunt? I feel like I have been taught a lot about being a better hunter, and I've learned a lot. But instinctively, I think it was just in us, and it's in us. And I think society can take that primal desire away from us. If you're living in New York City every day, you're not thinking about what it is to find a steak. Matter of fact, there's a lot of people in New York City that might not even really realize they're eating a dead animal. I mean, I'd say majority do, but they have been ripped of the same Native American reason they hunted, to procure food. And so if we didn't have that, and if we lose that as a society and we completely become dependent on the government or just our financial means to buy it and it goes away, we are teetotally screwed. It's over, because we do not have the ability that we were born with. And if so, I think every man or woman, whether they agree in taking an animal for their table, I think if you're not familiar with it to a certain degree, the chances of you surviving in a Holocaust or an apocalypse or anything, or in tough times, you're minimizing your chance of survival. So that old saying, country boy can survive, that typically goes with the primitive instinct to know to hunt. But I don't think we have to at that level, and that's why it's being robbed of us a lot, because society has went past us. Everything's there for us, so therefore hunting can be hard. It's a lot easier to go to Publix and buy you a chicken breast. It's easier to buy you a steak and come home and cook it on your grill versus go spend 7 days in the mountains to try to secure a bull elk, or even they'll go get a deer, because it's a bloody, tough job is to skin out a deer and to prepare it for the table. But it's in us all. We have just lost it through the way society is designed. We're not hunting for a turkey to eat. We're hunting for the golden arches off the exit so we can go buy and get a Big Mac. And that's what's inherently changed. But the primitive desire to hunt, I don't think it'll ever go away. Just like the desire for a squirrel dog to tree a squirrel or anything in that tree, he's going to bark at it. He's always looking up. The lab is always looking to fetch a ball, and And the sissy's always looking for something to whine about. Some people are born inherit sissies, and some people are born a tree a squirrel or a dog is. Some people, and all of us, I think, are born to hunt. I really mean that.
Heck yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we got through most of our questions. Like I said, there's still a bunch still here. We could go on and on, but I think definitely let us know if y'all like this stuff and do some more
this was kind of against even our the structure of what we was offered to do. So yeah, I mean, if y'all like this type of thing, please let us know. We got a lot of cool guests coming in, but there was just a lot of things on my mind that I wanted to share and just get off my chest. So hopefully some people enjoyed it, but let us know what you think in the comments, man, and give us some feedback. I was excited to share some of my views, and like I said, I'm not hubris in the fact to think I know it all. I don't. It's just my perspective, and I think if you're going to have podcasts and you're going to have social media, and even for the people I disagree with and the people that disagree with me, we can all respect the fact that we have a chance to kind of talk about our identity and what we stand on and what we stand firm on. And in that, we can all also equally agree that no matter what we stand on in life and morals, that so many of us, if not all of us, we fail at our own standards. So I'm not going to be as judgmental as anybody else on when they fail or they make a mistake or say things in envy or jealousy or selfishness or narcissism. I'm not going to be judgmental of them, because I know deep down that not might they be them, and there's a lot of things that I stand on that I failed myself miserable. So if I can fail myself, I'm not going to hold you accountable for failing yourself as well. So we can just realize that we got a lot more common ground out there, and that we're all loving the same things, and that's our resources and our opportunity to hunt. And it's tougher these days than it ever has. But the flip side of that, we have more resources than we ever had. It's just more expensive and hard to find those opportunities and places to go. So with that, man, love you guys. And if there's anything else out there that anybody wants to ask or whatever, Mason or Ryan or Cohen, but outside of that, I think we'll close it up and we'll have some more great guests. And thank y'all for watching the Michael Waddell Podcast. Maybe I should give my own self a bottle of that Hilt wine, because all guests get them, and we usually get a good cigar from Cigars International. So you know what? I'm going to treat myself to that. Tonight, I'm going to bird watch with my wife. I'm not going to have any remorse. I'm not going to kill one. I'm going to have a glass of the Hilt wine and have me a nice Fuente cigar that I secured through Cigars International. Thank you guys for watching. Love y'all.